Hello, hello, hello. We've done it. We hit the button. Oh, that turned down. Perfect. Perfect. There's always some kind of technical difficulty. How we all doing today out there? For some reason, I have the theme song to Gaston. As a specimen, yes, I'm intimidating. I don't know why. So I feel like if I just sing it, then it'll all shake out in the wash. When I was a lad, I ate 4 dozen eggs every morning and blah, 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 blah. Look at you! Long Defiant, good to see you. Yeah, honestly, guys, another week of just like same old, right? Decades where weeks happen, weeks where decades happen. Well, this is just the decades, weeks. This is the slow one. Like, it's all little stories. Like they're building a Kevin O'Leary is building a data center. It's like the size of 4,000 Walmarts. And everybody turned out to be like, don't do this, boo, we hate it. And they went ahead and did it anyway. Which honestly is like so stupid because those people are going to get cleared out. Like those people are going to get cleared out of office. The next group, like the capitalist class is beginning to see that there are actually political limits, right? That if you completely break everything and destroy everyone's life and do everything that everyone hates, they will become politically active and mess your shit up. And it just flows into the everything we're seeing over and over and over again flows into like a principle that I see. Oh dear. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Minor disaster. Minor disaster. Everything's broken. Sorry guys. I have a curtain. Give me 1 second. Hello, ex televiewnis. Hope you're well. Okay, hold on. I definitely should have done this before the stream, but that's okay. There we go. Got a little natural light in here. Ex televiewnis. Oh, have I never seen you before? Are you new? Sorry, I think your name is pretty similar to somebody else that comes in, so I thought that you were not a regular, but you'd popped in before. If you would like to talk to me about communism, you go right ahead. I give preference to first-timers. Understand that I do have rules here, which is, if you're mean to me, I'll get rid of you. Popped in before, well, good to see you. If you're a Nazi, I'll get rid of you. And if we're having a conversation, it becomes obvious that you're like a flat earther, I just get rid of you. Yeah, I am Canadian, I'm a communist. You used to live in a communist collective. Well, what an interesting perspective you must have. I assume that there was all kinds of internal drama and all sorts of ridiculous things that happened. Back in my home province of Manitoba, there were several communist collectives, and they had all kinds of weird, wacky stuff going on inside of them as well. The Long Defiant writes, some outside analysts are estimating that the attack on Iran could last 18 to 30 additional months, basically waiting for the next administration. 20% lower oil production for the next 2 years. Bonkers. I'm actually of the opinion that what is happening in Iran is now the new normal. It's just how it is now. Welcome to the new normal. Trump is now in China. Right, he brought him and a bunch of CEO idiots, basically, with him to China. Was this the list? Yeah. Full list of business executives joining President Trump on trip to China. And really what's on the table is just like a return to what was going on before the invasion of Iran. Like, Donald Trump is trying to regain what America had already agreed to with China. It's just we're in this, like, the people who have inherited the systems are too stupid to understand the nature of those systems. That when the systems were created, they were created by people who understood the relationship between the workers and the owners. They understood that the system was unjust. They understood that there were reasons why things were the way they were. They understood the relationship. Like the billionaire class understood its relationship. The robber barons understood their relationship to the workers. Like they got it, right? Now the inheritors of those systems are religious fanatics, and they're just morons. Like they don't understand the nature of the systems. They they don't understand how like insignificantly small the demands of the public actually are. Like that's the part about it that's so embarrassing as we move forward. Ben writes, "Hi John, I'm shit. How are you?" You know what, man? I'm also kind of shit. Like, this next month for me is going to be pretty intense. There's going to be beekeeping. I've got tests coming up for my teaching English as a second language. There's a presentation that has to be done. I've got an assignment. So this next month is going to be pretty intense. I'm actually going out beekeeping tonight, which is going to be nice. I'm yet to actually have seen these bees. I'm getting out quite late, actually. So I suspect I'll go out there and there'll be consequences for that, but we'll see. We'll see. And Extella Venus is saying, you used to live in a communist collective in Spain. Oh yeah, Spain is fairly communist positive. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Spain. Ben writes, my mom got her EAL certificate when I was a kid. She spent so much time away from us studying for that. I mean, they want to make sure that the people they send into the world are accredited and know what's up. Bong Defiant writes, the US needs Venezuelan and Canadian heavy crude for diesel, but there's no further replacement. Venezuela can't up production for at least 3 years. Gonna get interesting. Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump outright explicitly said it this week. I don't have the article in front of me, but he said specifically, like, a reporter asked him, like, hey, do the financial needs of the average American factor into the way you think about your decisions about what's going on? And he said no. He said, no, I don't think about that. And like he said of Iran, I'm trying to make sure they don't get a nuke. That's thought number one. So it's literally like, when it comes to the subject of whether or not they're saying it out loud. They're just saying it out loud. Like, they don't care about you. They don't think about you. Whether or not you can buy food or pay rent is just not part of the way they think about things. And yeah, Trump is losing a step or two. Like, we're starting to see... Did I actually pull this up? We're starting to see Donald Trump do, like, Twitter rants that are... obviously dementia, like pretty obviously. Like they're at a point now where my big indictment of the Trump administration isn't even Trump himself any longer. It's straight up like who are the people that are still letting this guy have access to Truth Social or Twitter at 3 a.m. because he's obviously got dementia. Like it's really, really obvious that that's the case. He'll just do these unhinged posts, like one after the other, after the other, after the other, and he'll do it for hours. And like, if your big complaint about Joe Biden was that he was old and losing his mental capacity, well, guess what? Trump is older than Biden, and obviously has dementia, and is obviously like lost connection with some very important realities. But when your stated philosophy is reality is what I say it is, right? You can just believe what you like and say what you like, and if you punish people for not going along with your kooky, ridiculous kind of flat earth ideology, what are you going to do? X Dallas writes, China is going down the pragmatic route. They've always been pragmatists. Like, I do think that for the Chinese, like it's so interesting how often the conversation between capitalism and communism is framed as an ideological difference. And I don't think the Chinese ever thought for one moment that it was an ideological difference, because it isn't an ideological difference, right? Like, not believing in phrenology is not an ideology. It's not ideological to say there are some things that are real and some things that are not real. That's not really an ideology. Like, it's not ideological to say 1 + 1 = 2. Adhering to what reality has presented us is not an ideology, if you understand me. Like, it's not ideological to be like, I require air to breathe. Like, these are not ideological statements. It's Westerners really get into this hyper ideological space when it comes to capitalism versus communism, because that's the only space that capitalists can present an argument any longer. That if you actually look into like the pragmatic reality of what capitalism is versus the pragmatic reality of what communism actually is, it's pretty obvious which system is going to be victorious in the long term. Capitalism has been able to assert itself through extreme acts of extraordinary violence for a while, but it seems like if it's going to continue with that theory of governance, then it's total annihilation or nothing at this point. That capitalism is on the way out, the way phrenology was on the way out, right? But there was a period of time when phrenology was like the greatest thing ever, and everybody was like, phrenology, oh, we need to have these departments, and Queen Victoria is having a symposium on phrenology, and we've got all these lecturers and speakers, and like if it was in the modern era, you'd have people like doing TED Talks about phrenology. And then like very steadily people were like, yeah, phrenology is not a thing. Like, it's not a real thing. It doesn't predict anything. It's just kind of a kooky pseudoscience that really is upholding a racist ideology, is really what it's doing. Because it allows us to be like, oh, you have the cranium of a black person, and so you're inferior, right? And so it faded out. And the same thing will happen to capitalism. It just fades out because superior models that adhere to the reality of the world, right, to the reality of reality, are emerging. And we call them pragmatic because we're so steeped in an ideology, we're so steeped in a religion that we call capitalism, that we assume that everybody else is operating on the same ideological bandwidth. We assume that everybody is making decisions from this very fundamentalist religious ideological place. When the Chinese are like, no, we're moving forward on this because it works. Our goal is to increase the prosperity for our people. That's our goal. The goal is to make sure that everybody has a decent quality of life. The goal is to ensure that everybody can move forward and do the things that they want to do in the world and be free to be able to do that to the maximum degree that they're able to do it. These are goals that we want for our citizens. And if your goal is not to do that, if your goal is to make sure that your citizens do not have a good quality of life and do not have positive outcomes and cannot pursue, then we have serious questions about what you think governing is about and what you think the point of being a ruler is, or the point of being alive in the world, really. Like, we're beginning to have more serious conversations about what is the point of life. And like, there are people who genuinely think that the purpose of life is to be subservient to a billionaire for your whole life. Just like you actually think you're supposed to be like a toady. That when you watch like your shitty Marvel movies or your Disney schlock, right, and you see like the evil villain and you see his dumb subordinate sidekick, the person you relate with the most is the stupid subordinate sidekick. Like, you think you're supposed to be rock steady and bebop, like at this point. And it's getting that embarrassingly obvious that that's the case. And more we're seeing, like, we are beginning to see emergent moments. Like, what was one? Oh, this is one thing I really love. 80% of Americans think Donald Trump started this war with Iran to divert the focus from the Epstein files. 80%. Now, that's according to Breaking Point 360, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's still like a startling result. One that actually, I think, bears out. Like, if you look into the culture, there's no mainstream comedian or mainstream artist who is like defending Trump and actually defending the Epstein files. You got to go talk to the Nazis like Ben Shapiro and his ilk in order to get any kind of defense for Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody else, the centrists, the people in the middle, the non-politically aligned or the non-politically active, everybody understands that Donald Trump is obviously tied up in this Epstein shit, and that the Iran war is 100% part of that process. Ben Jorgensen, Alberta separation struck down by courts today. Yeah, good. The whole thing is, again, like, I don't have the smoking gun. I don't have the article to show you to be like, aha, this is true. But the Alberta separatist movement smacks of a CIA psyop. Like, the whole thing, it's following exactly the same step-by-step procedure as other CIA psyops have. The goal is to create a separatist movement inside of the country in order to destabilize and weaken it. Like, that's the purpose of it. And I'm more or less of the opinion that the Alberta separatist movement has already been fairly successful, because the goal isn't necessarily to have them win and be actually separate and all of that. The goal is to terrify the political apparatus of Canada into allowing the continued privatization of oil in the country. That's the goal. Like, continuously threaten in every single way you can the political bodies, so Mark Carney and the Liberals, who are inherently cowardly and will bend the knee at every opportunity to anybody with a shred of power. And so you push through this kind of thing to show them, like, look at the lengths we're willing to go. Like, we are willing to push this all the way up to right to the line of stepping over and actually shooting guns. Like, we are willing to do it. Look at what we're willing to do over here. And if we're willing to do that here, imagine what we're willing to do to you. So play ball. Like, to me, that's what the Alberta separatist movement has always been about. And the Liberals are bending the knee and they're kowtowing. And, like, yeah, of course the courts are going to stand up and be like, yeah, no, like, that's not a real thing that you can do. But that's not the point. Like, the people who are funding the Alberta separatist movement are well aware, like, that's not going to be legislatively possible. Like, this isn't a serious thing. That's why I haven't done heavy reporting on the Alberta separatist movement, because it isn't serious. It's not some, like, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, the Alberta separatists, big goal today, and Alberta is now a separate country, oh my god. Like, none of that's going to happen. That's not a real thing. And all of the, like, press that's being given to it is so clearly, like, the power structure of the press. So the oligarchs essentially threatening the political apparatus into compliance. That's what it is. And the political apparatus is complying. The oil sector in Canada will be sold for profit to the oligarch class, and it will continue to be that way. And that's 100% what's going on. So, big victory for Canada against the Alberta separatists, but they're getting everything they want. Except, like, the super true believers. Like, there are super true believers who are just like, Alberta is its own independent and it should have an Alberta for Alberta. And it's like you talk to these guys and you're like, you are communists. Like everything you believe is communism. Like, but you say communism and they just lose their mind because they don't know what it is. And all they've ever heard is just communism bad. And I get my opinions from Nazis. But if you call them Nazis, then, oh, you think everybody that's bad is a Nazi. There's like a tight ideology that they have completely absorbed wholesale to deflect them away from the very thing that they are longing for and striving for in their life. Blind Defiant says, why aren't I on Substack yet? I got my first paid sub last week. Honestly, very weird. I don't know. Like, I know what Substack is, but my understanding of Substack is that it's like articles. And I don't really write articles. This is pretty much what I'm doing. This channel has essentially turned into my own personal like therapy session. Like, how do we deal with the reality that we're presented, and how are we dealing with being alive in the world? To me, that's like the grand conversation. It's the scary conversation. It's the conversation nobody wants to have. Why are we alive in the world? Like, what is this? Why are we here? What's the point? Why should we do anything? What is success? What is victory? What does it mean to be here? And like, we don't actually talk about any of that. We don't have serious conversations about that. That success is literally like exploiting as many people as possible and creating like a little demon town for yourself and going to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Like, that's considered success. So it's like, oh, I don't really want to participate in that. Well, then you're a loser. Oh, okay. Like, there just comes a point where, like, I feel like I've completely I've completely detached myself from the culture. That if this culture is producing something, I'm immediately skeptical of it, and it means that I alienate myself from the people who have bought in. Right? That like, there's so many times I have conversations with people, and it's just pearls before swine. Like, everybody loves this Marvel schlock, and everybody wants to talk about fucking schlocky Star Wars bullshit, and everybody wants to talk about the new Star Trek and everything, and it's all trash. Like, it's all garbage. Like, everything about it is garbage. And there's actually a great article that I'd like to read. I started reading it, and I was like, I think I'm going to bring this to the stream, because this article, this is from Current Affairs, and Current Affairs has been like, what's interesting about Current Affairs is that it is about culture, right? It's a cultural paper that, or a cultural magazine rather, that isn't about news per se, but it is about commenting on culture as it is and taking a more critical eye of what it is. And what I found really interesting about this particular article, and when I began reading it, it's like, here's an article that's actually looking at a phenomenon like Jimmy Fallon, right? Who is like the faffiest, schlockiest, probably most meaningless thing on television, and then taking an actual critical eye on it and being like, okay, what does this mean? What does it mean that we have this absolutely inane, purposeless, pointless show in this very traditional popular television slot that millions of Americans still pay attention to and adhere to? What does that mean? And so I think I'll be reading this article. I don't know if I'll be doing it quite yet, but Long Defiant, I would welcome US balkanization. Yeah, I mean, it is going to happen eventually. Whether it happens today or tomorrow or in 10 years, like, it is what it is. I suspect we'll see a lot more frantic American expansionism. There's going to be a lot more war in Latin America, probably Mexico. Wouldn't be too surprised to see some minor scuffles and conflicts between Canada and the United States. Like, America is going to use its military power until it can no longer do so. And what's going on with Trump right here is just the first shot across the bow. And what what's really happening is there's a reconfiguration of power globally, and that's going to happen first. The reconfiguration of power globally is going to happen first because there's a emerging understanding going on where America is no longer considered a valuable partner to most of the world's population, right? Like if you're in Africa, across most of the Middle East, Russia, China, Southeast Asia generally, like there is this emerging understanding, and there is opposition emerging, even in places like Japan and Korea, where they're beginning to say like, hey, these guys are not reliable partners. Like if something serious goes down, are we really convinced that America is going to come running to help us? And lots of people are beginning to say, no, don't think so. Where this is like most present and most obvious is in the rising opposition movement that exists in Taiwan. The Taiwanese government, the president of Taiwan, is pro-West and is pro-Western and works with the West and will have like senators and will have meetings as if they are their own country. Whereas the opposition movement that's rising in Taiwan is basically saying their plan for the Western plan for Taiwan is to turn Taiwan into the new Ukraine, is to create a forever war where China and Taiwan are constantly fighting each other and are at odds with one another, where America is just funneling weapons into Taiwan and we exchange Taiwanese blood for American gold. And that's the goal. And they're just saying it, right? They're just explicitly stating it out loud. And that's going to trickle into American politics and American daily life, where people more and more, and you'll see it more and more as the response to Trump comes in. To me, that'll be the real death knell. The real death knell of America and American politics will be when the next wave of Democrats take power. And right now you have somebody like Zoran Memdani, right? And Memdani is like, hey, we balanced the New York budget, and we did it by raising taxes by 2%. And like, there will be these little moments of like, haha, yeah, that is a success. And haha, we did a thing, right? And then you'll realize, like, pretty shortly thereafter, that there's been no fundamental change to your quality of life. Your rent is still going up. Inflation is still going up. The amount of money you have is becoming less and less powerful and less relevant. That the Democrats are hoodwinking you, right? And that their hoodwink is just a different grift, right? While the Republicans constantly appeal to your arrogance and sense of self-importance, the Democrats are willing to give you like a 0.01% increase over 10 years. They're willing to be like, oh yeah, like we should have like, you know, a small grocery store on the corner here. You know, we should have like, you know, basic infrastructure and basic shit. Like, but they're not actually going to meaningfully confront the system of capital that is constantly betraying you and is constantly putting the country into a state of total decay. Like, they're not actually going to meaningfully do that. And to me, that's when the real trouble is going to begin. Like, we're going to look back on Donald Trump and be like, oh, he was the shot across the bow. He was the moment when the American public were like, we can go down this road. Like, we can do this. Like, we can absolutely do this. And instead of the power structure actually like sitting up straight and being like, okay, we have to actually like care about our citizens and take care of things and actually like build important infrastructure and, you know, have a civilization and have a culture and have a society and actually like squeeze out a lot of this, like, if you're poor, it's your own fault kind of thinking. Like, we've actually got to seriously confront the systems that have been put in place. They'll instead give you like a 1% increase over 10 years, which will get chewed away by inflation anyway. And it's classic liberalism, right? And we're in a position now where classic liberalism is just not even close to good enough. We're not remotely in a place where just the liberal mindset of small piecemeal reformism is going to get it done. Not simply because of people's quality of life, but also there's a sense of a need for justice. Like, Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files. He should go to jail. The people who were involved in that scandal should be investigated. There should be a massive tribunal, like a massive tribunal. There should be at something as big as the Church Commission, probably more significant than the Church Commission. There should be a huge commission done on Jeffrey Epstein. There should be a huge investigation into that, and the people involved in that should go to jail. And if that doesn't happen, like if a big wave of Democrats come in and that simply doesn't happen, which it won't, and if it does happen, it'll be very much performative, and maybe they'll pick the one guy who spends 2 years in prison kind of situation, and be like, well, what are you talking about? We got that one guy. He went to jail for 2 years, right? Like, and that's the way the Democrats are going to run this thing. And I think that the wave of disillusionment and rage, there's going to be so much anger in America when that shit starts happening, and it's just going to be unstoppable. Dave, good to see you. Baldy, good to see you. Austin, good to see you. Matthew, a pleasure. Good to see you guys. Radio, good to see you too. Radio says, I have run across some Newfoundlanders on Facebook trying to separate as well. I mean, the separation impulse, it always exists. There's always about 20 to 30% of the society that is sort of in that mode. They're rarely like super vocal about it, but it when pulled, you'll see a pretty consistent across the line about 20%. Because people are of the mindset that, hey, why are we federated if we're not getting anything out of that federation? You know, like if you're a state or a province that pays a lot of federal taxes and you feel like you're not actually getting anything for those federal taxes, yeah, you're going to be of the mindset that, like, why are we involved in this? And all it's going to really take is a serious push by the billionaire class, which I think they'll do. Like, these guys are clear psychopaths, like obviously detached from reality. Ben writes, nobody in Ontario would want to separate, or the Maritimes. Again, like you end up with about 20% when pulled. Like, people are, what's going on here in Ontario is that because there's been this massive wave of immigration that has come in, people are too disorganized. Like, there are entire industries that have been completely decimated here in Ontario. I watched the service industry in the last 5 years just get completely destroyed by this wave of immigration that's come in. And that's not me blaming immigrants. Like, I think that people should immigrate and people should be able to move around. But, like, it has had profound effects on what's gone on in the service industry. You walk into literally any service place and it's just all recent immigrants and temporary foreign workers, and like it's been this wholesale destruction of the service industry in big and serious ways. So this is what people living here are experiencing, and it's very, like, pretty much everybody I know has moved out of the city of Toronto. Like, I'm like the last holdout, because I've managed to get my life configured so that I'm able to do it. And what I've witnessed here is dramatic. It's a dramatic change that has happened here in Toronto. And so it's not that I think people are not upset with what's going on. It's that they have to leave and they have to move and they have to be disorganized, and they don't have the energy or the will or the money or the time to be able to dedicate anything to anything. Right? Like, their life is being, like, everybody's life is being routinely and systematically destroyed consistently and constantly. And the people who have the time to be able to dedicate themselves to politics and legislative policy don't experience it. They just don't experience it. They don't experience the systematic destruction of the people around them, right? That they're the person that managed to get the house and probably has the kids and like all of this. And so they're able to have the foundation upon which to work from. And they just don't talk to the people who are routinely having their lives systematically destroyed by the system of capital around them, because those people leave and they go elsewhere, right? Yeah, Dems won't do anything. Yeah, feckless, weak party, except for the Zionist occupation and billionaires. For them, they have strong spines. Yeah, of course. No, and so like moving into like the midterms, which we're going to be doing soon. We're going to be getting like all the midterm news. And it's going to be all this midterm stuff, and we're going to big campaign, all the Democrats. Well, if you look here, all the gerrymandering story and all this, and it's just like. It's just so obviously a vanity project between two people. Like these guys I just want to be the leader so that I can be the one who enacts all the policies that we're going to get enacted by the other party anyway. And eventually there'll be a moment. There'll be a breaking point between the political apparatus and the citizens, where the citizens finally, en masse, and it'll probably articulate itself very clearly through like a comedian. That there'll be like some comedian that comes up who finally is like, the Democrats and the Republicans are allies, they work together. And if you actually think that these two are meaningfully different in any kind of way, then you're absolutely fooling yourself. Like, yeah, Democrats lie like Republicans lie. They just tell you the lie that they think you want to hear, right? They tell you the black lies. They tell you the lies that a minority group wants to hear. They tell you the lies that the trans person wants to hear. Those are the lies that they tell you. And maybe they do make some concessions along lines that are meaningless to them. Like they just don't give a shit if it's like, yeah, we're going to have a trans washroom. Okay. Who gives a shit? Like, it doesn't matter to them at all. Like, as long as they can continue picking your pocket and as long as they can continue destroying the country for their benefit, they'll do that. Like, they'll happily sign off on a document that increases the rights of black citizens by 2% over 53 years if it means they get to go have sex with children on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Like, that's the deal. And chances are really good that there'll be a moment where you'll have like a Louis C.K. or like a George Carlin kind of level comedian who finally gets to that kind of top echelon, who just makes this argument and does it persuasively and in a way that's humorous, in a way that gets people laughing, so that people just kind of fundamentally understand that, yeah, the Democrats and the Republicans are allies. They work together. They're friends. They're buddies. Danny Aaron's thoughts on the mass Indian influx into the Maple Country. I know you're immensely patriotic. I mean, I wouldn't describe it as patriotic. Like, I'm not like a Canadian nationalist, but but Canada exists as a idea or a concept, and I am here. So, hello. Yeah, the mass immigration that came in, and it was primarily Indian, like it's from India. It was done by the corporate class on behalf of their profits. They wanted to destroy and undercut the labor market here in Canada, and they achieved that. And it gives them the opportunity to pit nationalists against immigrants, right? It's very classic. Like, it's just a classic gambit that they do repeatedly because it works. Because the average citizen and the average Canadian doesn't have the conscious awareness on the level required in order to fight back against the owners of the country. They don't understand that the villain of the piece are the owners. They don't understand that. All they see is they took our jobs. It's literally just like, I was here working this job and then this Indian guy came and took my job and they laid me off. They took our jobs. Like, that's basically as far as most Canadians get. I'm not against immigration, but like, it's very clearly being wielded as a weapon by the corporate class. Eggs D, good to see you, my man. everyone shits on Indians and South Asians here, even other immigrants, including and especially petty bourgeoisie Chinese Canadians. Yeah, anything to turn people against each other, right? Like that's the goal. And this is why I so confidently say the country will tear itself apart. Like capitalist countries will inherently tear themselves apart and fall apart and balkanize because the people who own the place see benefit to doing it. Like that's really what it boils down to. You know, that's what the whole immigration scheme has always been. And like I say it over and over again on this channel, you can rule through love and compassion, like, and have people love you, and you can govern that way. You can also govern through fear, right? And I would argue that Mark Carney is one of the most terrifying fearmongers that Canada has really ever seen. He speaks with a like calm presence, and he states things very calmly. So he's not like coming down on you. He's not doing that. But you listen to what he says, and literally every word that comes out of his mouth is done to inspire fear. That's his goal. And he doesn't have a message of hope. He doesn't have a message of compassion or love. His message, like the thing that he'll say over and over and over again, right, is we have to govern not out of a sense of the way we want things to be, but out of a sense of how things are, right? He'll say something like that, which really is saying, hey, all those hope and change people, shut the fuck up. Reality exists. And of course, reality from Mark Carney's perspective is capitalists own this place. That's the way it's going to be. You can wish it wasn't that way, but tough shit. Like that's really what he's saying is we can't govern based on a vision of hope for the future, right? We have to govern based on the fact that you're slaves working for owners. That's Mark Carney. So he's governing very specifically from a position of fear-mongering. And it's very effective. And it's effective because his calm approach and the way that he's presenting it, right? It's like that capitalist realism. It's like, too bad, like he doesn't even bring it up. He doesn't discuss capitalism. He doesn't talk about it. That's just the way things are. It's like a natural force, like gravity, as far as Mark Carney is concerned. And that to me is what makes him a very effective like propagandist and a very effective politician, is that he doesn't really engage in the debate. To him, capitalism is just a force of nature, and he treats it as such. And it isn't until you actually like listen to him critically and you go like, oh, hey, like, well, what do you mean? Like, we can't govern based on what we hope, right? So no vision for the future, no positive outcome for the future. That's off the table as far as Mark Carney is concerned. And we have to govern based on what is actually happening. Well, what is actually happening is capitalist realism and capitalist domination. Long Defiant writes, I hate to say it, but I'll give kudos to Trump for trying to prevent corporations from buying single-family housing. It's unenforceable, but still a nice message. But like he'll say the exact opposite. Like he'll say the exact opposite in 5 minutes. Like that's the thing about Trump, is like if you want to cherry pick what he says and like create a list of things that support your position, you'll find it. Because he's said it. Like he's a grifter and a liar, and now he's dementia riddled, right? So everything that, like, you literally cannot trust a thing he says. And the entire rest of the world knows it. I want to get into this article, The Banal Horror of Jimmy Fallon. And like, I know that I'll get into talking about cultural things on this channel, and it does seem superfluous, but I don't think it is. I've never thought that these things are superfluous. because it's the things that seem the most innocuous that end up being the most sinister. The things that you just kind of take for granted. Like, what are you consuming when your guard is at its lowest? What are you paying attention to when your guard is at its absolute lowest? In those moments when you're just fading out to sleep, or in those moments when you're just home after a hard day and you're just watching something, like what is it that you are engaging in thoughtlessly? And an article like this, I think, shines a light on something that people would call pretty innocuous. And like, why do we give a shit about Jimmy Fallon? So let's. Under the sterile blue lights of his studio, Fallon laughs endlessly at the same pseudo-jokes, rubs elbows with Trump and Sam Altman, and ushers in the death of culture. Yeah. I love this article already. This is by John Greenaway. There is a distinctive, deeply uncanny horror to the way Jimmy Fallon laughs. Look it up. There are literally hundreds of videos of him breaking out into laughter at the slightest provocation. It is not a reaction. He sometimes won't even wait for his guests to get their carefully scripted punchline. Rather, it is a performance, a sudden corporeal convulsion. Fallon leans in his chair as if pressed back by some unseen force. It's accompanied by the ritualistic slapping of the desk, a sound that echoes like a gavel in a courtroom. Watching The Tonight Show in the deep hours of the night, beaming out from a phone screen or laptop, there's an unshakable impression that this is not really entertainment, but a desperate kind of ritual. Fallon acts as the high priest of a terrified optimism, his rictus grin serving as a shield against the encroaching silence of the real. Here, in the sanitized, overlit heart of the American culture industry, there is an inescapable horror. But it isn't a monster lurking in the shadows. It is the manic, unblinking insistence that actually there are no shadows at all. If the Gothic tradition of fear teaches us that the ruins of the past haunt the present, The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon offers the inverse, a present so forcefully flattened, so aggressively fun, that it has exorcised history entirely, leaving us trapped in a sterile, eternal loop of viral games and celebrity lip-syncing, while the world slides into climate collapse and fascist politics. A typical episode of Fallon's Tonight Show has the usual staples of the late night format, the ones introduced by Steve Allen all the way back in the 1950s and perfected by Johnny Carson. An opening monologue, a couple of celebrity interviews, a musical performance to close out the evening. But what's made Fallon so popular has been his use of endless, repetitive, shareable games. Night after night, he invites you to watch people you know from other shows on TV, or who just coincidentally have a movie or an album to promote. Play Pictionary. Watch them lip-sync battle. When watching almost any video that goes viral from The Tonight Show, all I can think is, haven't I seen this already? Of course I have. We all have. The whole point of these dance challenges or singing challenges or party games is that they are fundamentally repeated gestures. They're shared, copied, and endlessly reproduced. These games are not true play in the revolutionary sense of the word, wherein games are unscripted, free, and disruptive. Instead, they represent the total commodification of play.
In a cultural landscape dominated by the attention economy and defined by precarious labor and existential dread, Fallon presents play not as an escape from work, but as an obligatory task that must be performed, a contractual obligation to a marketing team. He recently joined forces with the soulless monstrosity that is State Farm to shill their insurance. In a great detail, their ad highlights that you don't actually need to tell a joke for Jimmy to appear. You just need to say the word joking, to summon him like a cheap simulacra of Bloody Mary or Candyman. Advertising Fallon is indistinguishable from him on the show. After all, he is doing exactly the same thing. Fallon and his pseudo-play are, as Bo Burnham pointed out in a 2016 stand-up set, the end of culture. People we've seen too much of, mouthing along to songs we've heard too much of. Celebrities fucking around in front of us to take up our time and our attention. Watching The Tonight Show is an exercise in cultural déjà vu. It's the endless repetition of the already familiar in a setting that is designed to gain our attention, but makes no other demand upon us as a viewer. The familiar cry of let people enjoy things might come in response. But this is what we're supposed to enjoy. As Kate Wagner writes for The Baffler, it may appear somewhat cruel to take entertainment to task, but the far worse alternative world would be a world without criticism. A world well-wishing people are now working to build for their bosses. One where monopolistic media conglomerates cater to our simplest desires and our most superficial political awareness, until we are all forced to communicate with memes from pods wholly owned by Disney. We're just going to have to let people dislike things. Fallon presides over his rituals of play like a vampire, feeding not on blood but on enthusiasm. He doesn't really converse with any of his guests. They all know what they are there for. Rather, he extracts. He demands relatability from them, draining the authenticity from the interaction until only the husk of a viral moment remains. The horror lies in the repetition, the feigned shock, the hysterical laughter at unfunny mishaps, the relentless golden retriever energy. It is a performance of joy so excessive, so desperate, that it reveals the void it attempts to cover. It is the logic of the assembly line applied to human connection. What Fallon offers is a standardized production of fun that feels increasingly like a desperate plea to ignore the crumbling world outside the studio walls. The real unsettling mechanism of Fallon's banal horror is its insistence on a radical non-engagement with reality. A position that, in our current political climate, is itself an aggressively political act. Fallon doesn't do politics, or if he does, he wants to keep his head down, because we hit both sides equally. Tellingly, Donald Trump has called for the firing of almost all the other late-night hosts, Colbert, Kimmel, even Seth Meyers, but excluded Fallon from his hit list. Because Trump recognizes that there's nothing about Fallon's empty banality that could be anything close to a threat. Contrast Fallon's empty, no-thoughts presentation with something like Dick Cavett. Back in 1969, on what was, at the time, the most popular show in the country, there's a 17-minute segment with James Baldwin, on the possibility of black liberation in America. There's a moment where Baldwin talks of the American system wanting him as a black man to be an accomplice to his own murder. The camera cuts back to Cavett, who has been listening intently. I don't understand that last sentence, says Cavett, which leads into a discussion of the work and activism of Stokely Carmichael. What's shocking is not just the content, but the space and time given to ideas, to the intellectual and cultural problems of the world outside the studio walls. In contrast, Fallon is desperate to keep the real world out. In his interviews, he barely seems to be listening to his guests, waiting for them to finish speaking so his rituals can begin anew. The constant, forced joviality can't completely conceal an encroaching terror. The horror of the political world that keeps threatening to break down the walls around his studio castle. This machinery of niceness reaches points of fracture, but only occasionally. The most infamous was back in September 2016 when Fallon hosted Donald Trump. He sat with the then candidate not to interrogate or even lampoon him, but to perform a brief, cozy skit culminating in Fallon mussing Trump's hair. The moment was not just a lapse in judgment. It was the ultimate logical endpoint of the show's ideological structure. The Tonight Show is built to liquefy all phenomena into content. Trump, the political reactionary and demagogue, the harbinger of a crisis, was treated not as a threat to democracy or a figure of public concern, but just another wacky celebrity guest willing to play along. Fallon and his show are not horrifying because they are malevolent, actively creating suffering in the world, but because of a thoughtless, systematic refusal to perceive any of their work as having ethical consequences. Trump's monstrosity becomes merely eccentric, as neoliberal media packaged as entertainment normalizes a failing status quo. Another example, Paris Hilton went on the show in 2022 to discuss her then recent wedding. In the video, Jimmy even holds up a framed picture from the altar. On cue come the awes from the audience. We're told that Paris didn't cry, but her fiancé, now husband, did. Jimmy laughs at this for no discernible reason. Then comes the horrifying turn. They start talking about NFTs. Non-fungible tokens, the picture of cartoon primates that were briefly supposed to be the future of finance. Jimmy pulls out a picture of Paris's NFT, one of the infamously fugly bored apes. Fallon's face is a perfect death mask of impassivity, his eyes a blank and empty void. He confesses that he has one too. These financial instruments are now virtually worthless. But at the end of the interview, the point of the segment becomes clear. She's there to give away her own NFT to the audience who, on cue, cheer. Fallon lurches to his feet. I think that's the first NFT giveaway in television history, he cries. You can practically see the blood dripping from his mouth and eyes. There has not yet been a second giveaway, but perhaps with this particular blend of vapid, ritualistic positivity and speculative, environmentally damaging technology, once was enough. The peak of this banal nightmare arrived only recently, when Sam Altman, the serene architect of our contemporary algorithmic enclosure, sat across from Fallon to discuss the most intimate of human labors, the rearing of a child. and how he simply couldn't imagine raising his newborn baby without the help of ChatGPT. With the flat, bloodless affect of a man who has already priced in the end of the world, Altman described using ChatGPT as a parental surrogate, unlike with Hilton, where the audience is deathly quiet. As Altman offers up the future of his own offspring to the black box of his company's large language model, Fallon's grin never wavers. It is the ultimate Gothic inversion. The living child is transformed into a data set to be optimized, while the host performs a pantomime of joy to mask the sound of a tomb clicking shut. The horror of The Tonight Show is perfected not in its live broadcast, but in its fragmentation and digital afterlife. The show is precision crafted for algorithmic engagement. Every episode is around 90 minutes of filming, whose primary purpose is to generate 10 minutes of highly clickable YouTube content. Fallon isn't really a host. He's more a content curator, constantly mining the moment for its potential as a self-contained, shareable commodity. The true audience is not the people watching at home at 11:30 p.m., but the anonymous mass scrolling through video feeds the next morning. The original broadcast becomes merely the raw material for the machine, haunted by its digital offspring. This is where the Gothic element reasserts itself. The uncanny feeling that the show you are watching is not really happening. It is a ghostly simulacrum, merely rehearsing itself for its eventual, more profitable existence as a series of clips. That said, the live studio audience plays a crucial, though ultimately passive, role in this arrangement. Their exaggerated, almost robotic applause and laughter are essential. They provide the necessary social proof that the segment is, indeed, fun. They are asked to perform the joy that the viewer might no longer feel. The audience, under the thrall of the glowing applause sign, becomes, in effect, a collective mechanism for suppressing negative critique, enforcing the manufactured consensus that this vapid spectacle is exactly what we want, and exactly what we deserve. The horror of The Tonight Show is not found in any singular problem, but in the totality of its project. The systematic replacement of the real world with a brightly lit simulation of niceness. Fallon is the court gesture of the Anthropocene, a figure who invites us to watch celebrities play parlor games on stage, while the air outside the studio begins to smell of tear gas and smoke. In Fallon's sterile loop of viral repetition comes the final victory of the commodity over human beings. A world where even our laughter is outsourced to the demands of the algorithm. You don't even need jokes anymore. All you need is to say something that sounds like it could be a joke, and the hollow laughter will come. To watch Fallon is to stare at the face of a culture that has chosen the comfort of a rictus grin over the heavy, necessary terror of the truth. It serves as a grim warning. If we cannot reclaim our play, our politics, and our presence from this algorithmic void, we will be left with nothing but the echoes of a desk being slapped in an empty room for an audience that has long since ceased to exist. Oh, we've got a raid over on Twitch. Good to see all of you. we're just finishing up this article from the current affairs about Jimmy Fallon. I rather enjoyed reading that, I have to say. There's something lovely about just like this sort of Vincent Price-esque, like dark gothic language. I rather like that. Good to see all of you on Twitch. Nilo says, are we reading the whole thing? Yes, it's well written anyway. Yes, that's why I like about it. Long Defiant, who watches Fallon anyway? Lumpen proletariat. It all feels like Hunger Games to me. Yes, I rather like the line that they said near the end there, where it's as he performs while the air outside smells of tear gas. Yes, the horror, the horror. If I had to guess, I'd say boomers and Gen X maybe watch Fallon. I suspect that like clips of Jimmy Fallon come up on my feed, right? And you see like a celebrity, someone who you're kind of familiar with, doing something, you know, silly or ridiculous. And in the minute or 2 minutes that you have it on your feed, it feels innocuous. There's an innocuousness to it. But I feel like this article really highlights, it's when you step back and you see it on a whole, you see the entirety of it. There was this interesting interview that happened on Stephen Colbert's show. I believe it was Stephen Colbert's show. And he had on all of the other late night hosts, John Oliver, Kimmel, Seth Meyers, right? In order to discuss sort of the political climate that they were all in and what they were experiencing. And I didn't notice it at the time, but in retrospect, I did, that Jimmy Fallon was absent. And Jimmy Fallon is the host of The Tonight Show. And so even amongst the hosts, there's this understanding, there's this separation that Fallon exists in his own world and that he is surviving out of this banality and this vacuousness. And where this resonates with me is that one of the great pieces of texts that come out of World War II is a text called The Banality of Evil. That after World War II and the Holocaust and the horrible events of it, people were asking the question, how did this happen? How did this great evil, and what are its qualities? And what the people who were looking into this discovered is that primarily the people who were involved in the process, the people who were involved in the Holocaust, and the people who were enacting the Holocaust, and the people who were enacting World War II, were primarily just going along with it. That they had no special hatred of the Jews. They had no special hatred. That perhaps when you get to the top of things, and not even perhaps, but when you get to the top of things, there is a more explicit hatred there. But the guards and the people doing the acts were really just like, yeah, this is how you get promoted. This job paid more than that job. And it was the banality of it that really shocked everyone, and the banality of those involved in the process. And that I feel like resonates with me when I read this article, that Jimmy Fallon is banal. He's almost nothing. And yet he persists at the highest level of our culture and of our society. And given the seriousness of what we're experiencing, and I even have a website here. There's 132 warehouse fires going on. As America burns down, and as the unreported revolution and the disorganized fracasness of a population betrayed, and that is betraying itself, as it begins to become more serious, Jimmy Fallon's act becomes more and more horrific. and strange. Yeah, the terrifying part of the banality of evil is how run-of-the-mill doing the evil was. Yes. And this runs into a concept, other people have named it other things. I call it normalization, that the human beings are highly adaptable creatures. That I don't really believe in the idea of human nature. That if humanity does have an inherent nature, then its quality is adaptability. That it is our ability to adapt to our environment, to normalize things that are happening in our environment, and our ability to survive many different configurations of environment that have led to the success of the human species. That, and if the environment around you is saying, hey, the way to be powerful and the way to have the most wealth and the way to be the most successful and have the most children and be able to be have the most status in the society is to pull this lever that gasses these Jews, then it turns out that there's a huge group of people who are just like, oh, okay. And they don't think of the ethical or moral consequences of it. They don't have any particular dislike for the Jews. All they know is pull lever, me do good. Money line go up. And it really is that straightforward. And that quality is something that I think is actually extremely well understood by the right and not that well understood by the left. That if you want a society that produces good results, then you want to build an environment that actually supports that. And if you want an environment that produces evil results, then you just need to build a system that does that. Waxing philosophical. Normalization is a great term to use. Well, you ask yourself, like, anytime you go to a culture that you're unfamiliar with, and they'll have what we would consider cultural norms, and that they're different from our cultural norms, that there are certain things that you're just not supposed to do there that we would consider either innocuous or exactly the thing you are supposed to do. This is how you end up with like cultural faux pas and like, oh, you really stepped in it. He did the thing that everybody over there thinks is an insult. And that's normalization. And it can get really odd. Borg with a $10 donation. I appreciate that, my man. Thank you so much. Nilo Nostrum says, I watched a movie the other day that referred to burning down your own warehouse as Jewish lightning. Ay, ay, ay. Yikes. Alani. Is this your fault, Alani? This is your fault, is it? You bringing in these people? Well, that's kind of you. The XD calls this the mentality. The mentality. Content, good to see you, my man. Gotta be honest, I haven't engaged with this side of Western culture in years. Years? Like, even the article sounded weird because how the fuck are Fallon and Colbert relevant right now? How? Yes, exactly. Like, even the idea that these people have cultural relevance is sort of odd and strange, isn't it? Like, who cares? But millions of people care. And Stephen Colbert and what he is going through is national news. It's international news, for goodness sakes. Hold on one second, guys. It's got the sun in my eyes here. I would prefer if it wasn't. If it wasn't so. But that's the tradition of late night, right? The tradition of this institution, this institutional force that beams into our daily lives. And what is amazing, and the article pointed this out, right, is that if you go back to the 60s, if you go back to the beginnings of late night, there is space opened up for the culture to have serious discussions about the more serious aspects of the civilization or of the culture. And that's gone. That's no longer the case. Like, can you imagine like the head of the Black Panthers being allowed on a late night show to discuss race relations? Can you imagine even a professor on any late night show there to discuss more significant race relations or racism in America? Can you imagine someone like Chris Hedges going on to a show like Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon in order to have a serious discussion about the nature of capital and what's going on in the society? Like, these institutions, these cultural institutions have been distilled, have been completely, they've had their purpose squeezed out. That there are clips from back in the day where you would have members of the Black Panthers and members of the Ku Klux Klan on the same show in order to discuss the issues of the day. Can you imagine? Like, and there is something extremely horrifying. There is something extremely brutal about a society that enacts these horrors against itself, but refuses to actually talk about them. Like, that to me makes it so much worse, that we're expected to go along with this show. We're expected to play nice. And you can see this attitude. Like, if you have ever worked for a corporation or a company that has an HR department, like, you're working for fascists. You are utterly censored. You are not allowed to have an opinion. You are not allowed to have serious discussions about anything whatsoever. The fascist element is extremely heightened, and the worst part of it is that you are expected to participate in your own self-destruction with a smile. This is the primary reason why I say the service industry is being destroyed here in Canada. That what we have done is we have completely undercut and destroyed any Canadian citizen. Like, you can no longer have a serious career or be considered a serious person being involved in the service industry, because they'll replace you with a recent immigrant, right? A slave through their temporary foreign worker program, the slave program that exists here in Canada. And if you do go to work for any of these service industries and you have thoughts at all, you are told that you cannot. Like, these are totalitarian dictatorships that exist in our society pretty nakedly. And we're supposed to pretend like they don't exist, or that they are equitable somehow, and that the relationship between us and them is somehow a consenting relationship. Yeah. We have a fellow, Matt over on Twitch. Using your brain under capitalism? That's bad for profit. Well, and this to me is the fundamental, what fundamentally destroys the system of capital is that I've said it on this stream, I'll say it over and over again until the day I die, is that the people who set up these systems were intelligent. Like, they understood what they were doing. They understood the nature of their systems, and they understood when to give and when to take. They had an understanding, and there was a discussion. And there was also like a self-ingratiation and a delusion that exists amongst all ruling classes, but there was this understanding that it could only go so far. That you can't have people just starving in the street. You can't have rampant homelessness. That eventually it will turn against you. And there was an understanding there. This ruling class is the inheritor of those systems, and they are fundamentally stupid. They have a exclusively religious fundamentalist view of the position that they're in. Yeah, and that's why Elon makes no sense. And what's crazy is that, especially about Elon Musk, if you want to discuss him, the loser that he is that he's still pushing. Elon Musk says his goal is to reach a 10 trillion net worth. This tells you pretty nakedly that this guy is the stupidest person who has probably ever lived, frankly. Maybe that is your goal. You should definitely not be saying that out loud. Like, if you are going to be pursuing obvious supervillainy, like very obviously just evil shit, you should not be saying it publicly. You just shouldn't be. And it's for the most obvious reasons you can possibly imagine. But they have bought in to a religion and a religious ideology that they call capitalism. Because the only way that you can be an adherent of capital any longer is if you are a religious acolyte of it. If you actually were to investigate capital and capitalism scientifically, you would be a Marxist. Because there's just no rational conclusion to capital that goes anywhere else except utter self-annihilation. That's the road for capital. That's the way it goes. And we're witnessing this self-annihilation happen in real time, week over week. And it's just going to accelerate, and it's just going to get worse. Well, the capitalists are going to do exactly what they've always done, which is use extreme violence. That's going to be their solution. Like, for them, what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon with the Israelis is the template. That they've built a series of cop cities in every state, and the goal will be to create a gate that they extend outwards and outwards, cleansing anyone who doesn't adhere to their ideology. And it's a religious ideology that puts them in the center, of course, which is very useful. Yeah, they're testing all of this out on us before they use it on us. Yeah. And that's historically always been the case. That to me is the major reason why, like, outside of like ethical considerations and moral considerations, why when you see your country going elsewhere and torturing and killing people elsewhere, you should be opposed to it, because anything that a country does to another country, it eventually does to itself. And you don't want those people to be well trained. You don't want a well-trained army of psychopathic torturers to turn around and come back home with that knowledge. Iron Moth, good to see you. A Machiavellian argument for communism. I mean, So many of Machiavelli's observations were actually quite correct. Like that's what's so interesting about the work The Prince. Um, it's this work that's persisted through time, even though it failed to accomplish the goal that Machiavelli set out to accomplish. And I think the reason why it's persisted through time is because when you read it, you're like, this is just some astute observations about power. So, for example, if the populace has to choose between a person with a familiar name or a person with an unfamiliar name, they'll choose the person with the familiar name. And that kind of observation seems kind of trite or kind of basic or almost like dismissive of the population, which Machiavellian is very dismissive of the intelligence of the population, rightfully so, in my opinion. But it's correct. And we saw that happen here in Canada, that there was an election between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. And the real choice for people who were against the Conservatives came down to the NDP versus the Liberals. And the NDP were led by Thomas Mulcair, who is essentially a neoliberal, like a right-wing trickle-down economist. He wouldn't have been very different from Stephen Harper, frankly. And Justin Trudeau. And the Trudeau family is a extremely well-established... Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, was the Prime Minister of Canada for decades and decades. Like, he was the Prime Minister, he lost an election, he still managed to be the leader of the Liberal Party afterwards and then won an election. So he was a Prime Minister twice. It's actually quite an incredible story. And so because the population is more familiar with Trudeau than they all are with Mulcair, they go Trudeau. And it really is that simple. The Imperial Boomerang is one of a few reasons I'm so staunchly pro-Palestine. Yep. Iron Moth says, how is life in Nazi America? I'm not in America. How is it in Canada? Yeah, Canada has taken a pretty significant fascist turn. I do see a response to it. There is a growing concern. Like, it's becoming obvious, is the thing, that lots of people for a long time are living in this sort of delusional headspace where you can try to make the argument that you just need to work harder, right? You just need to do more. But when you're in a situation where literally like 70% of your population is living paycheck to paycheck, and 70% of the population no longer believes that hard work has value in the society, like, that's something that if you attempt to maintain your position of just work harder, grind set, all that kind of stuff, then you're just like a manically delusional person. Like, you should probably be on medication. That's how delusional you are. And so there's a turning happening, but unfortunately, because Canadians are so weak and so just incomprehensibly overwhelmed by what's going on, and so unwilling to do just the most basic of things to sacrifice for anyone, the people they'll end up turning to will be like the Mamdanis or the AOCs of the world, right? You'll get your 0.2% increase on wages over 50 years. We'll give you $10 a day childcare, or which they're revoking now. Like, it'll all just be the smallest, most insignificant, like the kind of thing that is completely meant to just placate. That's really what liberals end up doing, and that's really what the quote-unquote left here in Canada end up doing, is it's all just extreme placation. Just give you enough so that you'll shut up, right? And eventually that'll get eventually that kind of blows up because eventually the material conditions get so bad for people that they're no longer willing to tolerate it. At which point, the power structure usually responds and something more significant tends to happen. And usually the party responsible for doing so is the Liberal Party. Because the Liberal Party exists to have power and for no other reason. And they have no morals, they have no principles, they have no central organizing thesis. They exist to have power and for no other reason. And if that means giving concessions to the left, they'll do it. That's how we got our healthcare system here in Canada. It was a concession to the left because they knew that if they didn't do it, they'd lose power to the NDP. And the point of the Liberal Party is to have power and for no other reason. And now you see it here on the right that the Conservatives were threatening to take power. And so the Liberals adopted all of their policies in order to have power. They don't care if it hurts Canadians. They don't care about Canadians at all. Like, the Liberal Party does not exist for the benefit of Canadians. It exists for the benefit of itself and for no other reason. And so the outcome of all of this is that our population is getting extremely fascist. Fascism is the most popular ideology in Canada today, and it really isn't close. It's not like it's like fascism and socialism neck and neck. It's like fascism, and then you go down like maybe 40%, and then you end up at like social democracy. Just the idea that maybe people shouldn't be eating shit, right? And it's the normalization of fascist ideology. And they managed to normalize fascist ideology in Canada and the United States just by relabeling it and giving concessions. So the concessions that the fascists gave to the populace was, okay, we acknowledge that subordinating people along racial lines is wrong. This was what I call the Great Concession. This is the concession that the fascists managed to pull off and internalize. That if you still subordinate people based on racial lines, you're just a Nazi, right? But fascists were like, but we like the economics of fascism. We like the dominance of one group over another economically. And so we're going to continue doing that. We'll just call it neoliberalism. And so they relabeled it neoliberalism. They tilted their head slightly and said, we feel your pain along racial lines and gender lines. And in many cases become the great advocate for race and gender issues, so long as you're completely subordinated along economic lines. Like, they're completely fine supporting the idea of having a black CEO as long as that black CEO upholds a system of wage slavery and is willing to send guns to Israel. Like, that's neoliberal ideology. Neoliberalism is a reform of fascism. And it is a form of fascism that still subordinates people and still creates subsects within the population. It just does it along economic lines. And that's becoming more and more obvious. That if you're poor in America, you might as well not be a person. And that's the most popular ideology that exists in North America. That if you don't have money, and if you don't have access to money, and it doesn't matter what mechanism or what occurred to impoverish you, it doesn't matter what injustice you experienced, you're just not a person. You're excluded from the society completely. And it's beginning to become so apparent and so obvious. And there's so many of them. There's so many people who are getting into this situation that people who would consider themselves centrists, so just like fascists who don't consider themselves fascist because they don't actually have a worldview, really. They're just a person living in the world, and they don't realize that their culture is fascist by its very nature. And so they consider themselves a good person. But there's no such thing as being a good person in a fascist society. Like, the society is fascist. But things have gotten so dramatic, and things have gotten so bad, and things have gotten so obvious that even those people are beginning to be like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know about this. Like, maybe the guy that's talking about, like, grocery stores, like, maybe the guy that's talking about, like, raising taxes on the rich by 5%, not even 5%, literally 1%. Like, maybe we should give that guy a try. Like, maybe we should check that out. And you kind of take a look at the Mamdanis and the AOCs of the world, and all these guys are rational fascists. Like, it's rational to create a society that is stable. That's just a rational position. Like, the only thing that causes the ruling class problems ever at all is instability. And our rulers are so demented and so irrational and so bought in to this religious ideology of capitalism that they don't care about instability. That their focus is just on profit motive, make more money. This is the righteousness. This is goodness. This is this. And if you don't like it, then it's because you're jealous and envious, and this is a you problem. You just need to grind set and work harder. And they just fail to recognize that there is this noose tightening around their neck. And even if they did see the noose around their neck, they would argue against it and say that this is unjust what's happening to them. It's like there was that CEO that recently said that saying tax the rich is the same as like racial slurs. Like, it's that kind of demented delusion that's taken hold of our societies. And whereas a rational fascist, like AOC or Mamdani, says, no, we can maintain this arrangement. We can maintain this arrangement of economic destruction of the society and the economic subordination of one class against another. We can maintain that. But we have to be rational about it. Like, we need some stability. Like, people, one of the things about people, like, you want to talk about human nature. Here's like a fundamental truth of human nature and of humans, is that humans will accept unjust systems as long as they are stable. As long as your system is feeding and clothing and sheltering people, and everybody is having like a reasonable time, like not even a good time, just like a reasonable, yeah, you wake up, you go to a job for people you hate and you don't know, to do a task that is pointless and probably destroys your society, and you know it does, but it pays your rent, right? And then you get to go home and watch Jimmy Fallon on TV and have some beers and smoke some weed and go to sleep, wake up, do it again, and then on the weekend you go do some thing, and everybody that is there is in the same boat you are, so you all cry in your cups and bitch about what's going on and get blackout drunk, and you spend the next day recovering, and then you go back to work and the cycle continues anew, right? Most people are willing to accept that as long as it's stable. But the people who are in power are destabilizing things, and they're destabilizing things on purpose with the intention to destabilize them. And they fail to recognize, because they're bought into the system and on a religious level, to them it is an ideological imperative that they view themselves as like high priests of a religion. So they don't even consider your suffering in the equation. That your suffering is just, that's just a like God is doing it, and you can't get mad at God, right? And that's, to me, is their final undoing. That's what's going to really do it. That at this stage in the game, most people, because most people are not politically astute or politically aware, and which is fair. Like, I'm not saying that to belittle anybody. Like, people have lives to live. Um, and of course, the danger of that is that when they become politically active out of necessity, they're susceptible to conspiracy and all kinds of crazy shit, which you see all over the place. But the people want to believe that the electoral system will respond rationally, that the electoral system will actually, like, oh, sure, we had this moment where there was like crazy Trump and there was all this kind of stuff, but the pendulum will swing back and we'll end up with a group of leaders who will actually set the ship aright. And they just kind of fail to recognize that the whole system is corrupt, that the entire thing is corrupt, that there are no actors within the political system that are interested even a little bit in righting the ship, that the AOCs of the world are just a more refined Trump. Like, the big complaint that Democrats seem to have is that Donald Trump is just kind of boorish. But in terms of policy, they're just in lockstep agreement on every single issue. Like, there's no genuine argument to be had in the society. And so what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with a whole bunch of people who are really holding on to the idea, to the hope, to the religious hope that somehow their political system will respond rationally and will begin to actually attempt to govern and bring stability, which I would argue is the entire purpose of having a governing structure in the first place. And it won't. It just won't. It's not structured to do that. It's structured to extract as much wealth and value as it possibly can from the populace, from the workers into the hands of the bourgeoisie. That's the purpose, the structure of the system. That's what it's designed to do. It was intentionally designed that way on purpose. James Madison literally said of the Senate that it should contain the wealth of the nation. That the concern was, if this is actually a democracy, then they're going to redistribute the wealth, and we don't want that. So we need to have mechanisms in place to prevent that from happening. You can see that it's as naked as it can be in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is so utterly corrupt and slavish and like Nazi-ish that you don't need to have any mechanisms to protect yourself from somebody coming in who might actually overthrow that arrangement, the arrangement between the bourgeois and the workers. Because the people involved in the Republican Party are just so bought into the idea that most of the population should be wage slaves, and that if you have money, it's because you're a righteous force and God is bestowing you with goodness. And if you are poor, it's because you've done something bad in the sight of God, right? And that's like the whole party. Whereas the Democrats actually do have mechanisms in order to prevent what people they would consider too extreme, i.e. anybody who wants to come in and actually say to the bourgeois class, hey, what you're doing is harmful and illegitimate. Like the healthcare system argument with Bernie Sanders. It's like so obvious that a universal healthcare system is exactly how things should be structured. And like every country on earth except America is doing it that way. And it functions, it works, it has positive outcomes for everybody. Because it's you can't have like a private healthcare system and have it function properly. It's just a non-starter. And the fact that a candidate like Bernie Sanders shows up and basically runs what I would consider a right-wing platform. I don't consider Bernie Sanders a leftist. Like, the only reason anybody looks at this guy and is like, oh, he's on the left of the conversation is because he's a rational fascist, right? And like rational fascists, they say, hey, like, the whole system is coming apart. Like, we benefit. The ruling class benefits from having the system that exists. And the only threat to our power is an overthrow, is a revolution against the system. And so the best way to prevent that from actually happening is to give the workers, is to give the citizens something that will quell them and placate them and get them to go back off to their Marvel movies and Disney schlock. And they just refuse. They just refuse to do it. Like, there's just a generalized refusal in the electoral system to allow that rational position to take place. And there are structures within the Democratic Party. The superdelegate system is exactly what I'm talking about, where you have these appointed superdelegates who can straight up just say no to the electorate. And that's exactly what happened to Bernie Sanders. They basically just looked at him and said, okay, sure, you're winning, but we say no. And so Hillary was the one, and you saw what happened there. And because they refused to allow a rational candidate through, there is no possible way that there will be an electoral solution, which is why the response from Americans has been to start burning down warehouses and to start destroying the place, because people have been completely alienated from everything. They've got nothing to lose, right? They've got nothing to lose anymore. They're no longer bought into the idea that there is such a thing as America, that countries exist only in abstraction. There is no such thing as a country. There's no such thing as a border. There's no such thing as a city, really. Like, there's no. These are abstractions. These are concepts. These are ideas. You could argue that they're useful ideas, right? It's useful to have, like, okay, where's our jurisdiction? If we want to make decisions for ourselves, well, where does ourselves end as a concept, right? And, like, in many cases, that mountain range makes sense. But, like, you need people to be bought into that idea. You need people to be bought into the idea that, like, yes, there is something called America, and America exists for our benefit. And more people are just beginning to realize this does not exist for our benefit. This is not beneficial. And yeah, Peanut Butter Beatrice, yeah, like the man said, all they had to do was pay a living wage. And that's what makes it so embarrassing. That's what makes this whole conversation and everything I'm seeing just so embarrassing. That the populace wants so little. It's so small what the populace wants. And that really what we're looking at is a ruling class that has become incapable of governing. That they're not really in power to govern any longer. That they're there for their own sense of power and wealth and status, and for no other reason. And if you stand against them and complain about it, then they consider you an enemy and a villain to be incarcerated and destroyed. That's their worldview. That's the way that they're looking at something. That a low-level case of exactly what I'm talking about was here in Canada, the trucker convoy. The trucker convoy was a real moment when the fascist power structure tipped its hands and really showed everybody, we are actually not here to govern. We don't have governing principles. We're not interested in governing. Because really all the convoy was just a bunch of unemployed truckers who were upset about it. And any appropriate government response would have been, okay, these are citizens who are coming to us with a grievance, who are really going out of their way to come to us with a grievance and make a point of it. And instead of treating them as citizens with a grievance, we are going to call them Nazis, completely villainize them in our media, incarcerate and arrest their leaders, and evoke an act that is literally meant for when a military invades us, which was overturned by the courts. I think the leaders of the convoy are actually going to walk away. In the end of it all, they're going to walk away with a couple $1 million apiece, I bet, out of all of this. Because they're going to sue the government. And they're going to be like, hey, you illegally incarcerated us and used this act illegally in order and illegally shut down our bank accounts and caused us a lot of problems. You owe us money. And I think the courts are going to be like, that's true. Yeah, that's right. When all the Canadian government and all the ruling class had to do is basically send down a delegation and just be like, what's up, boys? What are we talking about here? Like, let's boil this down to what its nugget is. Like, what is it? And do you know what those truckers all wanted? Every single one of them? They just want to go back to work. Like, that's what made the whole conversation so embarrassing. That they were literally just, I just want to go back to work, man. Like, I'm being told I can't go back to work because I refuse to inject myself with an untested vaccine. My body, my choice, I guess, unless it's a corporation telling me to inject something I don't know what it is inside of me. Don't trust the government unless they say inject this inside of me. Okay. And now I'm being told I can't work over it. And like, these are truckers. Like, these are guys, they don't contact anybody. They're not a vector, right? Like, in terms of a percentage, they're not going to affect, they're not the reason why this COVID thing is going to spread. Like, the whole thing in retrospect just gets more and more crazy and more asinine as you look at it. In the United States, the big tipping point was the January 6th invasion of the White House. Like, Donald Trump should have been incarcerated right then. Like, that day. Like, a group of people from the FBI should have gone to Mar-a-Lago, taken him, and sent him to a prison, and they should have had a big trial over it. Why didn't they? Because Donald Trump is one of their guys. Right? Donald Trump's one of their boys. And chances are good that really internally, all that January 6th stuff, like, internally they were probably all like, that one got out of your hands a little bit there, eh, Donnie? And Donnie's probably like, yeah. Like, I didn't expect it was going to go that far. And they probably all looked at each other and were like, yeah, all right, okay. Well, bygones be bygones. Because at the end of the day, they're all friends. They're all allies. They all work together. Like, maybe they think that Donald Trump is insufferable and like kind of a boorish loser. So what? They're one of him. He's one of them. Nilo says, yeah, well, some of the truckers and convoy people want fascism. Yeah, of course, fascism is the most popular ideology. Like, the ruling class is fascist. Wasn't associated with the far right for nothing. Who actually organized and funded that? It was organized and funded by Tamara Litch and Pat King. And like, again, like, they had no standing principles. Like, this is the big thing. Like, if you want to get into the weeds on the convoy, like, you're talking about people I grew up with. You're talking about like Manitobans and Saskatchewan people and Albertans, and like, these people have no standing. They didn't have a manifesto. And when you took a look at their manifesto, it really was just like, we want pro-business. Like, these guys just wanted to go back to work. And I'm sorry, man. Like, if you want to create like a big dissertation and create a huge argument that says we should give a shit about these convoy truckers, I'm going to boil it down to the very simple point. I don't know why I'm supposed to be criticizing a handful of rabulous truckers more than the fucking government. Why is it that the government gets a pass? Why is it that the people who own and control our military, who have hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of assets and resources that they can mobilize, those people complete and total pass? Small handful of rabulous truckers? Oh, we got to really have a conversation about that. How is that anything but just a wedge that's being driven between you and them by the ruling class, and you're just falling for it? Like, you can think that they're dickheads. They are dickheads. You can think that. You can have criticisms about the whole idea of what they're doing, the owner-operator system of trucking, and you can have all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the government is what you should be criticizing. It's wild to me that we don't. It's wild to me that even now that the Supreme Court has said that the government was wrong to evoke the Emergencies Act, even now, as they have incarcerated people like Pat King and Tamara Litch for minor things like mischief, right? Which is like, yeah, they organized a protest. Like, even now, as it's all coming out that it's all bullshit, even now as they salute literal Nazis in the parliament, like, our former blackface prime minister might as well have done a Zig Heil in front of the president of Ukraine for all of us to see, and yet we're all supposed to be like, but the convoy people, what are we, fucking children? Like, what are we, stupid? The answer is obviously yes. Like, the answer is so very obviously yes. Like, it's so easy to get us to just be like, oh, sure, yeah, like, the government has trillions of dollars of assets and illegitimately kidnap people and take them off the street. But boy, those guys, they were loud in those trucks, all right. Boy, they were loud, eh? It's just so easy, man. Like, it's, if I were the government, I'd be doing it too, because it's just too easy. We're too gullible. We're too stupid. It's too easy to convince us to hate our neighbor. To just point at some other guy and be like, wow, he's not like you, eh? It's just so comically easy. And this convoy conversation is exactly case in point. It's just totally case in point. They can so easily turn us against one another to the point where it's just comical. Just clownishly comical. Because at the end of the day, do you know what all those guys wanted? Every single last one of them. They just wanted to get back to work. That's what makes it so embarrassing. That's what makes this whole conversation so embarrassing. If the government had just gone, hey, guys, man, fuck, get back to work. Like, well, we can't get back. They were telling us, yeah, okay, we'll put in like a minor exemption for truckers. Like, get the fuck out of here. And like, they control and own the media. This idea that the media would have a heyday over it. No, they wouldn't. They literally wouldn't. They would do what the media does, which is publish it in Article 54, page 96, and have like a one-liner down at the bottom on the ticker tape so they can technically say they reported it, and the whole thing would just vanish. And maybe you would have some like liberal Karen somewhere being like, chickies, and that would be it. Like, they blew this up, and they blew it along ideological reasons, and the ideological reason was that they don't know how to govern, or they're not interested in governing. That for them, it's this personal affront. How dare they? How dare they expect us to govern? Like, govern. You're the governors. Like, you're the leaders. Like, people are showing up with a grievance. I don't give a shit if you think they're fascists. Like, I don't give two shits at all. I don't care, even a little. Like, they want to go back to work. That's it. That's all. That's 100% the only thing they wanted to do. Right? Put them back to work. Why is this a story? Why is this a thing? Why are you evoking the Emergencies Act? What are you doing? Because in my view, the entire reason why the liberals acted that way was to throw a cold, wet blanket on all organization across the country. You come at us and you protest against us, we will throw you in the slammer, dude. We will cause all kinds of... we will ruin your life if you do this shit. That's 100% what they were saying to everybody. And it worked. It completely worked. People are not interested in putting themselves out there and taking that risk. Because all you got to do is just put some slanderous bullshit in your media, and 90% of the populace just buys into it. Because we're gullible morons. Who are just buying into the stupidest possible... like, who gives a... like... yeah, guess what? Yeah, of course, like, rural country folk have a right-wing bent. And, of course, they're fascists. Fascism is the most popular ideology. The Liberal Party is fascist. Like, who gives a fuck about that point? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. We should incarcerate these people and hate them and invoke the Emergencies Act because they're fascists? The liberals are fascist. Who gives a fuck about that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, if that's your bar, then fucking we should be tearing the government down every second we possibly can. But we don't. The ballot box is the way it's going to go. Yeah, we're going to vote our way out of this one. For sure. That's what's absolutely going to happen. Jumbo Jack, people who fight back against Nazism are not themselves Nazis. Do you have a real question? I'm just going to give you one chance, because it seems like you're stirring up stuff in my chat, and I don't see any reason to keep you around just for that reason alone. So, do you have a question? Like, I'll give you one chance. But like starting fights in my chat is a bad way to start, dude. Like imagine calling someone who defends themselves a Nazi. Like it's actually embarrassing, dude. Like, do you think your mom is a Nazi because she put you to bed on time? Is that a real thing that happened? Ben says the convoy was supported by a portion of the government, i.e. the conservatives. Yeah, I mean, that was all opportunism. Yeah, the government clearly is happy to cultivate such a convoy and then make a spectacle of it. Yeah, of course. That's my point. Like, they're making a spectacle of it for a point, for a purpose. And that purpose is to say to everyone else, don't do this. Just don't do this. Like, do not engage with politics except when it comes to voting, and then vote for us. If you actually do something serious that causes the capitalist class any problems, we will incarcerate you and ruin your life. XD writes, to that same vein, Trump himself has become a red herring. People still think getting rid of Trump will fix everything, or that America will be good again. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the America's back. Jumbo Jack says, okay, this is cute. I'm fighting against Nazism, so I'm not a Nazism. I see you as promoting fascism. When? It's just kind of embarrassing, dude. It's not okay. You have the power to prove me you're not a Nazi, but let's see what you do. Just now? What are you talking about? What? Stating that most of the country is fascist? Like, what? Most of the country is fascist. Fascism is the most popular ideology in America today. Like, all you're doing is embarrassing yourself, my man. You know how the Nazis need an outgroup so they can pin people against them as achieving some goal. You just did this to me. Okay, you're just embarrassing. We don't need to keep talking to you. You can stick around and listen if you want, dude, but yeah, freedom of ideas. Yeah. I can only cringe so much, my man. It's just kind of embarrassing. It's the confidence by which these embarrassing people speak. That's what's so embarrassing. Yeah, maybe he's insinuating that you ban him. It's because you're a Nazi. I just, who cares what this guy thinks about anything? Like, to me, that just files into the flat Earth category, right? Like, eventually, there just comes a point where you just look at a person and you're like, oh, you're inventing things in your mind and creating a narrative that doesn't really exist, and you can't really like move on from that. You know what I mean? Like, once a person says something of you that is so egregiously incorrect, that's so just like egregiously wrong, I don't know that you can move on from that. Like, how do you move on from somebody who's like, Eleni says, he was in my stream and he was being obnoxious, but believed he could change, so I warned you don't play. And he called you a Nazi for it. Yeah, like, that's just stupid. Like, there are children on the internet, right? So I just don't have time for little kid shit like this. And that's just little kid shit. That's just, I'm not an intelligent person yet. My brain is still forming. So I'm not like trying to be insulting, but it's true. Like, you just kind of look at how some people talk and you're like, okay. You're in that mode of like, you think you know. It's like the Dunning-Kruger thing where you think you know more than you know. And you're like, how it's like that thing that John Cleese said, like, if you're a very stupid person, how do you know how stupid you actually are? Right? Like, you need a little bit of intelligence to know how stupid you are. And I think that's just what I saw there. So we can move on from it. XD writes, John, thoughts on the recent census? I know nothing about it. I haven't even looked at it. Yeah, XD. The natives shooting arrows at the conquistadors, conquistador Nazis, are just as bad as conquistador Nazis. Yeah, how dare we fight back? Like, it's always interesting. It's always interesting to see, like, how self-destructive people can get. And people can get really, really self-destructive. Apparently, I know literally nothing about this census. I have not filled out a census. I haven't heard of the census. I don't know anything about it. I theoretically like censuses, censi. Because it's information, right? Like, the idea that the conservatives had an idea under Harper where they were like, we're not going to do a census. And I'm like, that's the most backward shit. Like, how do you have information? How do you make decisions about anything? Like, if you don't know the basic makeup of your population, like. Pivoting to other news, this is coming out of CTV. As the US starves it of oil, Cuba is pulling off one of the fastest solar revolutions on the planet with China's help. Nilo says, alternatively, the people banning idiots are as idiotic as the idiots. Cuba is struggling with devastating nationwide blackouts as the United States' effective oil blockade strangles fuel supplies. But this crisis may also be accelerating a China-backed clean energy revolution that's been quietly unfolding in the Caribbean nation. Cuba is currently pulling off one of the fastest solar revolutions on the planet, with help from China, according to the data from the energy think tank Ember. Imports of Chinese solar panels and batteries have soared over the past year, and with Chinese investment, Cuba has built dozens of solar parks. The country is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels, but some experts believe that the intense US pressure, with threats to take control of the island, may hasten Cuba's path towards clean energy. More renewables means less dependence on fuel imports, helping remove this lever of coercion, says Kevin Cashman, the economist with the Transition Security Project, a US-UK research institution. There's a longer article. I won't read the whole thing, but like, this is kind of what I'm talking about, that you can only push people so far. Like, you can only push people so far. You can only get people so far down this rabbit hole where they're willing to tolerate what it is you're doing. And like, the United States cutting off oil to Cuba, in many ways, like, what's happening between Cuba and China? How to say this properly? China has shown repeatedly that it is willing to lose money, right, to take a financial hit in exchange for goodwill. It's shown that over and over and over and over and over again. And this situation with Cuba is absolutely the perfect example of this. Like, here in the West, we're looking at that and we're being like, oh, we're scaremongering about it. We're like, oh, China's getting closer to us. Oh, China's getting involved in our hemisphere. Oh, all that kind of stuff. But if you are in the rest of the world, you're like, oh, look at what China is doing for Cuba. Literally, they're being strangled. Like, it's a humanitarian crisis. It's a major, major crisis what the United States is doing to Cuba. And China's response to it is, well, we're going to respond to that. We're not just going to stand by and watch Cuba get strangled out. The only reason why like America has always it's an interesting situation what's going on with Cuba, because like America can't really justify a full-scale invasion on Cuba because there's not any resources there really, like on the scale that would be required to actually make the dollars and cents of it. There isn't enough of a population base there, so the slave labor argument doesn't really work either. It's like the only reason the Cubans aren't in like a full-scale war with America is because the Americans, at the end of the day, they worship money and they can't make the dollars and cents of it work. So they're just doing this blockade. And for the longest time, they were like, okay, blockade against goods and stuff, but we're not like, completely psychopathic. We're not going to like, create a Gaza in Cuba, except now they are. And they're completely willing to do that because the inheritors of the systems are too stupid to understand the systems as they stand. And so China is just running the blockade. And it's just like, okay, you're going to blockade them with oil? Okay, solar panels. Like, that's a solution. We've had great success. Yeah, U.S. management too stupid to back off Cuba. Well, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, the only reason to do it is outright because Cuba managed to overthrow the leadership, the pro-U.S. leadership. And it's just this, like, spiteful little kid logic that's just like, ugh. Eleni writes, I support the idea people can change, but some people just aren't ready, and I feel bad for the people who get banned and eventually do change, but no one believes them because these bad faith actors. Yeah, I believe people can change. I have significantly changed over my life. Like, I used to be a right-wing religious fundamentalist, right? And now I am not that. So people are completely capable of changing, but you are not responsible for that. Like, you're not responsible for their change. You're not responsible for any of that. And I'm more or less of the opinion that when I look back on what were the big moments of change in my life, what do I look back on and think, oh yeah, that was a moment in which my ideology began to pivot, or my worldview began to pivot. It wasn't people like graciously taking my hand and walking me to solutions, and it was people shutting me out. It was the people who were just like, bye. I just literally like, they were not in my life anymore. They were just straight up just like, that's an unacceptable worldview. Bye. Like, and that's steadily become my position on this channel. Like, you want to come in here and disagree with me and have a conversation with me and ask questions and get my perspective on something and say like, okay, but I see this way, and have me talk about that. That's fine. You can do that all day long. Like, this is literally my show. This is literally my space. So clearly I'm the one that's in charge, right? Like, very, very obviously. And that's fine. It's my show. You don't need to be here. It's when a person, like, if a person approaches you, when I first started doing this, I was a little bit more accommodating, but now I'm just like, I've come to realize that if a person is approaching you with a belligerent attitude, if a person is approaching you with belligerence from the outset, you don't need to talk to that person. Because if they're too stupid to understand like basic manners, then they're definitely too stupid to understand what you're saying. So you just don't need to deal with them. Very, very straightforwardly. Like, if a person just shows you that they're just like, and I know more than this guy, and you're stupid, and you need to listen to me. Bye. You just don't need to be here. Ben writes, I was so proud that CTV would let one of their journalists do this story that I saw it was CNN. JT writes, 4 years ago, I'd likely have debated MLs from an AOC type position, yeah? And fully believe these people are okay with these atrocities. They chewed me out, and I thank them for that. Yeah, it was on me. I mean, I've always been a proponent. Like, a big reason why I don't spend a lot of time pleading and begging and trying to convince people is because capitalism is going to convince you. Like, I'm just here as a lighthouse. That's really it. Like, I'm just here as a lighthouse. And I'm the one saying, hey, you're going to get lost in the fog. Like, you go out into the fog, or oh, you think it's clear now? Well, the fog is coming down. And when it does, I'm the lighthouse. And when it does, you come back. Or not even come back, but you think of me. Like, you think and you remember there was this one guy who I encountered who said all this shit was going to go down and said all this was going to happen. And it did. And that's going to send people down little rabbit holes and do all kinds of stuff, because that's exactly what happened to me with my religious fundamentalism. That it wasn't the big arbiters of change were not the ones who were like lovingly holding me and explaining things nicely. They were the ones who were like, what you think is harmful and you're stupid for thinking of it, and we will not be friends. Like, pretty firm. Pretty firm. And like, I think back on my life and I can see with clarity how many wasted opportunities I had. How many good people and how many good relationships and how many professionals how many doors were closed on me because of the worldview that I held and because of how I was interacting with the world around me, and how my closed-mindedness and my inability to see the other as myself was really holding me back in a lot of ways. That if I could go back and do it all over again, it would be different. Because I think that those people would be my friends and that I would strive to befriend them. Whereas I never saw them that way. Right? I never, ever saw them that way. And they clearly didn't see me that way. I can really think there was one fellow in particular, because the gay issue through the 90s was so prevalent and so present through the 90s and early 2000s. And there was one fellow that if I were to encounter him again, I would thank him for his frankness about it all. Because he was he was openly gay. He was a great artist, dedicated, diligent, friendly, lovable, exactly the type of person you'd like in a friend. And I pretty much did everything I could to alienate myself from him because of my religious fundamentalism and because of who I was. And he never shut me down. Like, he never said, he wasn't the one who was like, you're dumb, you're an idiot. And he actually entertained me in my questions and my ideas, which I look back on now and I see how homophobic all of that was. And I think it really showed a strength of his character to be able to stand in front of me being the person that I was and actually look at me and have like, and his answers were always very simple. It's always very like, he took it in and just said, look, this is what it is. And in a way, it was very, not flustering, but very puzzling to me. But it was an important part of my journey. It was an important part of my journey away from Christian fundamentalism. It was always clear that we were never going to be friends. And so, like, I don't owe people who come in here and treat me badly friendship. And I don't need to explain my position to somebody who clearly doesn't want to hear it. Like, if you don't want to hear it, and you're here to just blow off steam or to say that communism is responsible for the most death that you've ever seen in your life, and when literally capitalists are the only people who have ever dropped nuclear bombs on civilians. Like, we don't need to continue. I don't need you to be here. Real straightforward. Yeah, the missed opportunities are beautiful, but also sad. That's life. That's life. We're on this like roller coaster we call life, and we're all sort of like, you talk about normalization, right? One of the biggest normalizations that exists in reality is that life is normal. Like, do you ever pause and actually realize or think or dwell upon uh, the kind of wondrous nature of just the basic fact of your existence? That you are nothingness come to life. You are the universe put into motion. You are the embodiment of the undefinable become defined. That through a process of evolution and creation, you have somehow found yourself here and now with nothing to do but be here. And we all intrinsically take it for granted that this is normal. There is nothing normal about any of this. There's nothing normal about humanity. There's nothing normal about the situation we find ourselves in. This randomly generated environment upon which we stand, where we have this bourgeois class of child raping psychopaths who have their finger on the nuclear button, taking over the entire planet, being pushed back against groups of people who are finally just like, no, we think life should be okay. Like, and when I was younger, there was something horrifying or terrifying about the place we find ourselves in. But as I get older, like when I was younger, I was like, oh, the Illuminati and the people behind the scenes, and then you get a little older and you realize, no, the Illuminati is in the Financial Times. Like they're not a secret society. You just need to read the business press. And it's all very naked and upfront. Like you can walk into Wall Street. Like you can see who these people are. It's not a secret. There's no, like, every so often they might get together in a group. That was that, looking back on it, like that's the thing that's so funny to me, is that people are like, you mean rich people get together and talk about things? Looking back, I'm like, yeah, of course they do. Like, obviously they do that. Like, obviously they have like a soiree and they all get together and they have discussions about what to do. And now they're doing it like right in front of you and they publish it in papers. It's called Davos. Like, it's the World Economic Forum. Like, it's like completely, forget about the Bohemian Grove and all that shit. Like, it's like right in front of you. We're still like, the Illuminati is planning it's like, okay, I'm sure they are. And of course they are. They're planning it. They're planning it right in the Financial Times. And when I was younger, there was like a kind of a terror to it. There was something like scary about it all. And I think that's why the Illuminati thing sort of persists, is because it's more comforting to believe someone's in control, even if they're this terrifying behind the scenes unknowable force. At least they're in control. It's more comforting to believe that than it is to believe that no one is in control and it's all just kind of a crapshoot. And the older I get, the more I see how utterly pathetic these people are. Like, utterly, utterly, utterly pathetic. That, like, the minute Donald Trump dies, everything dies with him. Like his legacy, the idea, like there's this moment in history that he gets in a history book where he was the president, but like in a very short period of time, no one will give a fuck. And like I feel that way about somebody like Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk is clearly just a dude who wanted his dad to love him, and his dad doesn't love him because his dad is also a psychopath. And because he never got it, he's trying to get love from all of us. And it's like this, it's a hollow, fleeting thing that he's chasing. Eggs D writes, John, I just got back, saw Nilo got banned. I played the stream and didn't think they were making a joke. Probably didn't mean it unironically. Yeah, that's why I did it for a day. He can come back next week. It's fine. I've done that before, the Omnicidal. Like, I just don't want to hear this shit sometimes, man. It's real simple, straightforward shit. Like, don't call me an idiot on my own stream. Should be pretty straightforward, right? Don't call me stupid. Don't call me an idiot. Pretty basic. Pretty basic. Delaney writes, nothing about this is special. Oh, I disagree. I disagree completely. This is what's interesting, right? Like, the reason why the capitalists want you so powerless is because you are the most like, you are the expert of yourself. You're the master of yourself. You have something that they can't have, which is mastery of yourself. You are special because you are the only you that can ever exist and can ever have existed. There is no you that can be anything other than you. You are the definition of special. That just because the person beside you shares that same quality, which is that they are the they that can only be them, and nobody else can be them. They contain mastery of themselves. But that doesn't make you any less special in that regard. And of course, we could go down the rabbit hole of like, what do we define special as and who is special and all this kind of stuff. But like, the capitalist class does not want you. And I mean, the power, it's not even been the capitalists. I think it's been this way since Christianity. Since like the rise of Christianity. But if you go and you actually read the original texts and you read like the Gnostics and you read other texts outside of what has been canonized, you begin to see pretty clearly that there was an ongoing conversation that was emerging amongst the population, which was, hold on, if Jesus is the Son of God and Jesus is divine, why am I not the Son of God, and why am I not divine as well? And there was this emerging conversation that was happening amongst the population, where the population was beginning to see its own inherent self-worth and its own inherent self-value, and that each individual was beginning to understand its own divinity and its own specialness in the world. And that conversation has somewhat manifested itself in the idea of rights in our in our society, the sort of a secularized version of what I'm talking about. And the power structure had to clamp down on that super hard. That's why they decanonized a lot of all of the Gnostics, and most of the texts that have made it into the Bible, the canonized text, are like the stories of Jesus and then mainly letters from Paul, right? Mainly the story of Paul. And there's a lot more to Christianity than just that. There's a lot of stuff that exists that is not considered canon. But if you are a ruling class, if your goal is to rule over people and to and to usually dominate them, you don't want people thinking that they are like individually righteous or individually divine, right? Then they might begin to ask questions of the relationship between them and the state, or them and their lord, right? Or them and their owner. Like if you actually think in seriousness that you are a divine being, a son of God or a daughter of God, right? Then there are things that will be intolerable to you. It will just be simply intolerable to exist in a position of slavery, to perpetuate a system of slavery. And that's why Christianity was such a huge threat to the Roman Empire. That's why they threw Christians to the lions. That's why there was a huge problem. Because they saw it for what it was, which was a significant challenge to the ruling class's ethos, which was essentially, we are gods, what we say goes, and you do what you're told. It's a very might makes right sort of approach to the world. Ben, how often do you stream these days? Just Wednesdays, 6 to 9. I found that it's the honest truth, Ben, is that I was really presented with a choice that I could go down like the Hassan Piker route and like stream all the time. But really, I just found that like a lot of the news stories that come out are very superfluous, and you kind of have to end up making hay over pretty much nothing all the time. And there's this element of always on that it started to degrade my mental health, is really what it was doing. And it was really making me have a very like kind of bleak, I wasn't living a good life. That's really the truth. Like I was just always on the computer, always streaming. I just wasn't really having a good life. And this is much more balanced. This way I get this space where I get to kind of dump all of my anxieties and fears and concerns, and I get to give my unfiltered opinion and my unfiltered view of the world and share things that I've found and talk to you guys. Talk to you guys, which is always lovely. I really appreciate you guys coming in and with your comments. And your concerns and your questions, and I like giving my perspective on things that you out there in the world have touched base on. Like if something has grabbed hold of you and you bring it forward, I like to talk about it. It's nice. And in a kind of a way, like this channel has become my own personal like therapy. One of the big things that I've really noticed in my regular life is like before I started doing this streaming and before I was doing this, anytime I talked to anybody, I was like, I have to talk politics. I have to be doing it. Like, I have my perspective and you have to hear what it is. And people would say, oh, you're very passionate is what they would say. But really it was coming from a place where I felt like I didn't have an outlet. There wasn't really a place where I could put that energy, and so I was having to put it on the relationships around me. Whereas now, and I can observe it, I've seen it. Like the clearest example I have in very recent is that I have a classmate who is from Iran, very recently from Iran, like within the year from Iran, and she basically got here right before the war started, and she is from Iran, but she's opposed to the Ayatollah, and she's opposed to the Revolutionary Guard there, and for good reason. Like I'm not. If I were living under the Ayatollah domestically, I think I too would have things to say about the Ayatollahs, for sure. And that my perspective is usually global politics and geopolitics, right? Internal domestic issues, I defer to, okay, that needs to be dealt with internally. And that if you want to stop fucking with, if you want a culture to advance and stop being a violent culture internally, then you should stop messing with it, right? You should stop constantly sending it to war. You should constantly threatening it. You should leave it alone. Let it develop. But when it comes time to talk to her, I know that if I were to take sort of the forceful approach that I had of the past, that I would really alienate myself from her, and I would make maybe even an enemy of her. And I could never be somebody who she would trust, and I would never be somebody that she could consider a friend or a confidant. And so when it comes to talking to her, I really have to defer to her and let her have that space and share. And her experience, like, I have no right to deny her experience. She's from there. She grew up there. She knows what's going on there better than I do, certainly. But what I see in her is that her understanding of the political situation of Iran ends with her experience on the ground, right? She doesn't really know or even care about the relationship between America and Iran. She doesn't really know that much about the Shah, for example, even because she's quite young. And so when I talk about those things, there's like a delicateness about it, where when we speak, it's like, okay, like, the Shah existed, right? There was an overthrow of the country. But I can't deny her position. And I feel like doing this channel is what has gotten me to that point where I can talk to people who I inherently disagree with on the street. I can discuss things with people because I've come to this understanding. Well, first of all, there's a catharsis that comes with doing the channel. Like, part of it is just getting it out there, just getting it off my chest, and the catharsis of that. And so I don't need that catharsis when I have the conversation with other people. And so when I get in conversation with other people, I really do have more of a curiosity. I'm more curious about their experience and why they think the things they think and why they are in the position that they think. I'm less interested in convincing them of anything because I don't have that need inside of me anymore because of this channel. Because what I do. And it's pretty amazing. Like, a big reason why I have finally concluded that fascism is the most popular ideology in the country is just you have conversations with regular people, good people, hardworking people, regular people, and you just kind of come to see, like, oh yeah, like, your worldview is fascist. Like, you really believe that. You can't say that to them. It's pretty offensive. But if you were to, like, have a chart of, like, this is what fascism is, this is what it represents, this is the stated goal of it, here, and then you would take what they believe and what they say about things, you're like, pretty much point for point, like, right in line with one another. And so doing this channel, I found a nice little sweet spot where doing this channel helps me navigate my regular life. Doing the channel helps me navigate my professional life and helps me navigate friendships better. I'm able to enter difficult conversations with a lot less emotion and take a more reasoned position and be a little bit more accommodating to where they're at and to meet them where they're at, and to be way less judgmental of them. Like, one of the things, like I say it repeatedly, that we are primarily a fascist country, but it's not that we are a fascist country by choice. Like, people are just awash in it. They're just inundated with it. And because there isn't a counterbalance, because all anybody ever hears or ever gets is this extreme fascism just shoved in their face and treated like it's completely normal all the time, then people kind of just adopt that worldview, right? Like, tell a lie big enough, long enough, people will believe it. And so I find doing the stream to be very, very, very helpful for just my own mental health, my own ability to exist in the society, in the world. It alleviates a lot of, I guess the word is hatred. It helps me see more and more that most people are just regular people, and that most people are not, like, I am very clearly motivated to be like a cultural and political critic. It's so obvious. And that's not something that I like decided. It's just part of who I am. It's just in my DNA. It's just there. I can't not do it. I have to know what's happening politically. I have to know what's going on, and I have to be able to articulate my own perspective on it. It just is how it is. And the recognition and the realization that most people are not like that, right? Like, what I am doing is crazy. Like, this is nuts. It is. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. And I can tell, like, I've got people around me in my life who are like, I don't really get why you do this, John. Like, what is this? Why do you do this? And I can try to explain it rationally. I feel like I have kind of given a rational explanation just now. But, like, the truth is that I do it because I have to. I do it because I do it. And that's all there is to it. Right? Like, I do it because I do it. And my only real regret is that I wish I had have started sooner. I wish I had started the moment that YouTube showed up. I wish I had been like, oh, YouTube? Let's go. I'm in. And so doing this channel has had a lot of benefits for me, I think. And but doing it too much, like turning into like a Hassan Piker type, is just like, that's too much. That was super unenjoyable. And it was getting very tedious and very, and like, when you've got so much airtime to fill, you have to fill it up with banality. You have to fill it up with stuff that is, I just found myself at the end of it, when I was doing like the daily streams, I really did find myself being presented with something and then just being like, who gives a shit? Like, who gives a shit? Like, who gives a shit that Trump said a thing at a thing? Like, who cares? Yeah, I bet he did. Like, oh, John Bolton said a thing over here. Yeah, I bet he did. Like, who gives a shit? And I just found that to be too difficult. JT writes, people forget how regular day fascist states would have looked in terms of worldview and the average person. Yeah. And like how normalized it was all. And like, there's a type of logic to it, you know? Like, yeah, the state. We should all give ourselves over to the power of the state, and why shouldn't we empower the state? And why shouldn't there be a hierarchy upon which people are judged by their merits and like all this? There is a type of logic to it. Jordan Peterson was the guy who like really articulated the state of our fascist country the most clearly, and really revealed to everyone how popular fascism really is. that there's a hierarchy that we all ascend through our competence, right? The meritocracy of competence and all of this. And you just have to ignore like who's making the decisions about merit, right? You have to ignore very clear things about power. And like the individualism sort of dies on the altar of reality. Like you can only hold on to this individualist ideal to a certain degree, right? Like reality asserts itself at some point. And I would argue that it asserts itself a lot sooner than fascists like to think so. AC writes, yeah, people close to you, like your parents. Yeah, I literally had to be like, no, dad, that narrative comes from people who fucking hate people like us. Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, people want to believe that their neighbors and the people around them are, you know, good people coming from a good space. But like, it's pretty amazing how often I'll be talking to somebody and I'll be like, who did you hear that from? And like, you pull the cord and you pull the route and you eventually it leads to some Nazi somewhere. Like it seems to always be the case that eventually as you pull the ripcord, you're just like, oh, there's a Nazi behind this. Like, oh yeah, you got that from the Ukrainian diaspora, right? Those Ukrainians that fled from World War II, right? The Banderites, right? Stepan Bandera, right? So that's where you got that information from? Yeah, the people who fought against the Russians during World War II, right? Fought against the Soviets during World War II, right? Right. Who we applauded in Congress, right? Oh, in the Senate rather, or in the Parliament rather. Oh yeah. Ends up being like literal Nazis. You're like, oh, interesting. Oh, the victims of communism memorial had to get taken down because all the names were Nazis. Interesting. How'd that happen? How did it get to that point? Why wasn't it like the liberal leadership that were like, these are Nazis? Why did we actually have to create it and put it up and post it? Victims of communism, here's all the names. We definitely would have vetted these names and we would have known who these people were before we created the monument. Oh, they're all Nazis. Oh. Like, yeah, how do you think that happened? It's because during World War II and at the end of World War II, Canada opened its borders up to fleeing Nazis and closed its borders to fleeing Jews. There's your answer. So, like, lots and lots and lots of what you hear is just what the Nazis think. Ben Jorgensen, thoughts on Avi Lewis? Avi Lewis is going to be like AOC and Mamdani and all these guys, which is like, yeah, they'll come in and they'll raise taxes by like 1%, and they'll give a 2% increase over 50 years, and the news press and the media will lose their shit about it and be like, oh my god, it's communism and we all know communism fails and this is horrible. A 2% tax, everyone will flee and run, right? And it'll do exactly the thing that they say it's going to do. And your rent will still go up, and your bills will still go up, and inflation will still go up, and the corporate power state will still be in charge, and Avi Lewis will be like a fine face for that. That's it. Like, and I'm sure Avi Lewis is like a well-meaning person. Like, I'm sure that he's sitting there being like, I'm going to take power, and when I take power, I'm going to help people. And he'll help people with that. We're going to lower taxes on middle-class families by 2% over 10 years, and we're going to raise the corporate tax rate by 2%, and we're going to balance the budget that way, like Zoran did in New York, and so on and so on and so on. And like, you'll still rent from a landlord who raises your rent every year, and you'll still buy groceries from Galen Weston, who raises your grocery prices every year, and the price of oil will still be ridiculously high. Like, my feeling about a guy like Avi Lewis is like, he's still fundamentally at his core agrees with the principle of capitalism. He still agrees that capitalism is a system that should be maintained, and that all we have to do is kind of tinker around the edges. And that was sort of my big thing about Jack Layton, and in my view, the reason why the NDP declined and collapsed downward is because it completely lost its vision. It completely lost an alternative vision to the system of capital that we currently have. And it basically bent the knee. And it really became pretty obvious under Jagmeet Singh. And like, what vision did the NDP have? What was the better? Like, these guys could not stand up and even say anything about corporate ownership of housing. Like they just could not say it out loud. And until I see like an NDP leader actually use the word nationalization, because we should be nationalizing, we should be 100% nationalizing. It's sort of crazy that we're not talking about nationalization, that's not like a regular conversation. Like the idea that we're supposed to buy into the concept of Canada, but we're not supposed to have any access to its resources, that we're not supposed to actually own anything, that we're supposed to just be a country of renters forever, perpetually until the day we die. Like, and that the NDP just can't provide an alternative vision. So maybe I think in the coming elections, Avi Lewis will probably be your best choice, given the fascist nature of the country that you live in. But it's putting a Band-Aid on a gun wound. Like, the decline will continue. Borg writes, a very small minority can live comfortably with uncertainty. I mean, ignorance is bliss. That's the secret. Like, the less you know, the happier you are. Ong says, is the stream getting choppy or is it just me? I hope it's just you. I hate to say so, but yeah, JT writes, very sensible, a return to normal type of politics that feels, of course, radical, but no strength behind it, no movement. Facing the frail horizon is depressing, to be sure. If you want a politician to listen to actually get like kind of inspired, you want to be listening to Wab Kinew. He's the current premier of Manitoba, my home province, or my starting location province, I should say. And the dude has quotes like, of the Iran war, let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war. He calls the Iran war the Epstein war. And like, he's been asked to clarify positions and he just does not back down on that. I have not heard this guy miss a beat. And it just seems to me like if Wab Kinew were running as Prime Minister of Canada, I'd be like, that guy, vote for that guy. 100% Wab Kinew, for sure. Dude is standing up saying Donald Trump started the Iran war to deflect from the Epstein files. He's just saying it. And it's like, there's leadership. Like, that's a real leader. That's a real leader doing something real and tangible. And if I see Avi Lewis start talking that way and start taking more seriously the needs of everyday Canadians, then I'd support him too. But really what I see from Avi Lewis is the same thing I see out of AOC and Zoran Mandani, which is like a well-curated liberalism. Like, we'll give you a 5% increase over 10 years kind of stuff. And no real conversation about a fundamental and real change in the relationship between workers and owners. Like, which I think at this point is crucial. Crucial not just for the project of Canada, but for the success of the West in general. Like, there needs to be a fundamental confrontation between the workers and capital. And it needs to be like fundamentally done. Where the talking points of the capitalists need to be completely dismantled and destroyed. For example, like the big one, like, this is my money, I earned it. Like, my feeling is that the only rational response now is, who cares how hard you worked? Like, I worked hard, I earned it. Like, who cares how hard you worked? That's not the point. I bet Ted Bundy thought he worked really hard for his kills. I bet the Confederate slavers of the South thought they worked really hard too. But the question is not how hard you worked. The question is whether what you're doing is socially valuable or not. And we're all saying it isn't. It's not socially valuable. And in fact, the fact that you think working hard at it is what justifies it makes it worse. Like, your hard work is not the point. In fact, I'm sorry you worked hard for something that's so unjust. JT writes, the biggest pitfall is the fact it is meeting people who are trying to realize liberation and why the system is failing. And that opportunity and momentum gets sidelined to moderate hopes. We're here for a short time, not a long time, so use your voice for normalizing the true need for radical politics. Yeah, I mean, if things continue the way they're going here in the West, which they will, because we're not actually standing against it in a way that I would describe as serious. Like, the most serious stuff I see is like random shootings and warehouse fires, right? Just your regular arson, but there's no like serious organization happening. Like, you have a couple of candidates here and there, and it's like people want to believe. But the most likely outcome is just a significant and sharp decline. Like, once the AI bubble pops, like once that all blows up, it's going to get really bad, I think. It's going to get really bad for people. And people are already turning against the culture. Like the Met Gala that happened, right? Like, people are turning against that shit. People are looking at it and just being like, this is just ostentatious and gross. And it is ostentatious and gross. Like, if everybody was well off and everything was fine, it would be like, oh, interesting, art, fashion, like, that's cool. But you're spending like all of this wealth and all of this money and all of this time while people are living in poverty. Borg says, question for John, what are your thoughts on wage slaves who enjoy their jobs? Yeah, let them. Like, really, I know people who, they do not engage in politics. And if I begin the politics conversation, they're just like, not interested, nope. And it's like, it is getting harder for them because things are getting so egregious and obvious to pretty much everyone. But if a person has found something in their life and they've gotten to a point where they're just like, this is my life, I'm happy with this, I'm going to go forward on this, my only comment to them would be, just stay out of our way. That's all. Like, big changes in societies don't happen because like 90% of the society finally mobilize and do something. They actually happen when about 10% of the society mobilizes and does something. Right? The threshold for change is actually very small. It doesn't require most people. It requires a very small percentage of the population. But the other requirement is that when that small percentage of the population moves and mobilizes, most people just stay out of the way. And so, of the wage slaves that are enjoying their job and have found that kind of peace or that place, good for them. Stay out of our way. And they probably will, right? Because to be a wage slave that enjoys your jobs mean that you have kind of subordinated yourself in the first place, right? You do what you're told in the first place. So it'll be easy for them. But I don't think you should ever try to convince somebody who's like that to not be like that. Like just let him be, right? It's like, there's people should have good lives, and people should enjoy themselves, and people should be living a good life and having a good time. And if a person is in that position, or they feel they're in that position, just let them have it. Just let them have it. Because chances are good that, like, a person like that, who, should a revolution occur and should there be some dramatic shift, yeah, they'll fit it right back into that. They'll probably just keep doing the thing that they're doing, honestly. Don't start nothing, there won't be nothing. Grand Designs, you've been over here on Twitch saying things. You got a whole thing here, dude. Hi, what if you, as a socialist or USSR China fan, are leaving out of your analysis how powerless individuals is if they depend on the state collective to pursue his goal and attain their potential? I mean, an individual will always be less powerful than an institution. Centralized control does create vulnerability where individuals can become trapped, where all power flows through one channel. Accountability matters more than ownership type. Well, I mean, so the Chinese systems and the USSR systems, like, if you take a look at the way they're structured at the bottom, they're structured at the grassroots. That you'll have, like, local councils, right? And those local councils make decisions for themselves. And if there is, like, a larger consideration, then those local councils will make decisions, and then that will go up to another body, right? And so there's like people in the West tend to think about, like, centralized control from the USSR or China as, like, literally a dictatorship, where it's just like this small cloistered group of people who are making decisions for themselves, like they're the fucking Pope or something. And that's just not what happened. That's not what it was. That you had, like, thousands and thousands of people involved in the political process, starting literally in the farm fields and the factories, all the way up the chain until you get to the highest level of the decision-making apparatus. And so when you talk about accountability, like, what could possibly be more accountable than that? That the people are all involved in it. That in the USSR, when the accountability fell off, was basically when they betray the whole system. Right? That Gorbachev's decision to dissolve the USSR happened against the wishes of the Politburo. It was like 78% of voters were like, nope, Soviet Union's still good. And he decided to dissolve it anyway. So, and there was, like, a minor uprising that was quelled through military force. So it's just like, when we're talking about the USSR and China, I think the thing for us to do is to begin asking, like, what do we actually know about that? Like, what do we actually know about these systems, about these structures? Like, what assumptions are we holding on to? Are we still holding on to assumptions and claims made by capitalists? Yeah, because this system of democracy is really working, right? Like, this democratic structure is really, really working. There's no holes in this game. Like, where's the accountability here? We literally have a, like, child rapist president. Where's the accountability here? So, look at the Salman Rushdie case. The Ayatollah, as head of the Iranian state, was pursuing, with the help of the state and other Muslims, the enactment of the religious decree mandating death penalty for Salman Rushdie, who was not Muslim nor an Iranian citizen. And his successors recently eliminated Ayatollah Khamenei, confirmed that the religious decree fatwa issued by the first Ayatollah, calling for Rushdie's death, is still in effect. I don't know enough about it to speak to it, to be honest. I know Trudeau. Yeah, Trudeau kept the list of Nazis who arrived in Canada secret. Yeah, of course, because if they released it, they'd realize, oh, it's the entire Ukrainian diaspora. It also would put his finance minister at the time, Chrystia Freeland, on the hot spot. Like, Chrystia Freeland's grandfather literally was a Nazi collaborator, like, and she's never repudiated it. In fact, she's written that she was quite proud of the work that her grandfather did. So it's like, when you've got a Nazi in your cabinet, you don't want to release lists of Nazis. Yeah, and Christian's now working for Zelensky, of course. Like, one Nazi helps another. All right, guys. It's 9 o'clock. I'm going beekeeping right after this, so I got to get my act together. Thanks for being here. It's always lovely. Yes, I'm curious about the bees too. This is the first time I'm able to get out to see them. It's quite late in the season, so I could be going out there to just a bunch of dead bees, and that could just be what happens. I don't think I will. I think they'll be fine, but we'll see. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are doing everything they can to get you to not realize it. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure you don't realize it. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need